I'm going to have the Pledge of Allegiance, and Ms. Maxwell, you're in charge of that tonight.
Thank you. I'm proud to have the Riverdale Student Body President, Ms. Carly Strabag, here to lead us in the pledge tonight. Come on up, Carly. Let us see. There we go.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much.
We are now going to have our moment of silence, and I have several people that I would like for you all to keep in mind, so just bear with me. First of all, Principal Chris Lafferty. Many of you know Chris has suffered a heart attack at school, and on the way home, he went by school to make sure everything was all right. He had 5 bypasses.
And I'll add to that, he wanted to make sure the kids knew he was all right, because he's an elementary principal, so before he went home, he passed by school so they could. It's great.
Tells you about the dedication of our people. Also, Principal Tony Murray has lost his father this week. Don Odom, former superintendent of Rutherford County, has lost his son-in-law. And we have a student at Blackman High School that's been hospitalized after an athletic event. So I may add a few seconds so you can say what you need to say in our moment of silence. Thank you. I'd like to direct the board to the agenda. Do we have any questions about the agenda? Anything that needs to be addressed before we look at it? Ms. Darby?
I know in the past, sometimes when we know there's going to be discussion about certain policies, we'll pull them out separate. I am asking if we can pull out policy 1.404 and policy 6.3041.
In just a moment. Can't find them. I know they're in here. The fact that we have all those wonderful tenured teachers. Okay. Policy 1.404, we will be discussing, yes.
Okay.
And what was the other one?
It is policy 6.3041.
Okay. Actually, Ms. Darby, I kind of thought that I would let him read the policy and then I would stop and say, are there any questions or discussion? Because I feel like we might have some things we need to say, okay?
Thank you.
But I've circled both of
Ms.
those.
Bratton, I think we should vote on whether we're going to pull them out or add them together.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
I think we should vote, let it be the will of the board, if it's going to be added or pulled.
We can't vote.
Well, then Thursday, we shall vote.
We can do it Thursday, but tonight we get to
Then
discuss.
Thursday, we can vote whether we can add them together or pull them out.
We can do that on Thursday.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else for the agenda? How about the consent agenda? I'll give you a moment to flip through that. Any questions? We will move on to number 7, we will be doing on Thursday. Number 8, we will be doing on Thursday. You ready? Number 9.
Mr. McCann, we are ready for you with our Charter School Review Committee findings and recommendations.
Well, good evening, board members, and thanks for your time tonight and the opportunity to present the findings from the Charter Review Committee in our review of the initial recommendation for Nova Smart Academy to apply to open a new charter school for us in 25-26. First of all, I want to say a big shout out and a big thank you to the committee that really worked diligently through this time-consuming process. It really took a lot of time and effort, a lot of meetings, and a lot of reading to get through this process together. But they did a fabulous job. Many of them are here tonight, so I just want to say thank you to them for their hard work, and we'll recognize them here in just a minute. But also a big thank you to really Nova Smart Academy, Dr. Jeremy Sager and his board. They worked very hard on this project as well, and they really have engaged with us in a very positive manner during the process. So thank you to them for that as well. I'd like to start out with just a quick review of what the purposes are for charter schools. And according to Tennessee state law, there are 6. Number 1 is to improve learning for all students and close those achievement gaps, provide options for parents to meet educational needs of their students, encourage the use of different and innovative teaching methods, and provide greater decision-making authorities to schools and teachers in exchange for greater responsibility for student performance. In other words, that's the whole mantra of charter schools, is they trade higher levels of accountability for higher levels of autonomy and how they go about meeting those high accountability targets. Okay? Number 4 is to measure performance of pupils and faculty and ensure that children have the opportunity to reach proficiency on state academic assessments. Charter schools do take TE and Ready. They do take TCAP in all state assessments. A lot of people don't know that, but they are held to the same accountability standards as traditional public schools. The purpose number 5 is to create new professional opportunities for teachers, and number 6 is to afford parents substantial, meaningful opportunities to participate in the education of their children. So parent engagement is paramount. Now, to be approved or to be considered for approval, a charter school is required to address at least 3 of those purposes in their application. They don't have to hit all 6. They just have to address at least 3. And just a review of the timeline, we did receive a letter of intent from Nova Smart Academy at the deadline on December 4th. They got that in on time, and Dr. Sager came in and sat down with us and to discuss his proposal. He got his application submitted on time by February 1, which starts the ball rolling for us as the LEA to vote on whether or not we approve or deny. We basically have 90 days from that date, which will take us to April 30th. That's our deadline, is to vote, April 30th. If we don't, it's automatically approved. Now, if you vote to deny that application, the process does not end for them there. They have 30 days to submit an amended application for our consideration, if they wish. And then we have 60 days as the committee, again, to review those amendments and to make another proposal to the board for which you will vote. And if you happen to vote to deny them again, again, the process does not stop. They would then have 10 days to appeal to the state commission for approval. Okay? But that's where we are. Right now, we're at the very end of that 90-day window. And here's just an overview of the evaluation process that we went through. First of all, the committee met first on February 5th to get trained on how to review an application and what the scoring criteria are. The next month was spent, each member doing an independent review of that application where they basically read through it themselves, wrote down their feedback, their questions, their suggestions, their strengths, their weaknesses, and then we shared those together in several meetings. During that month, we had 4 subcommittee meetings where a small section of the committee met to go over specific parts of that application that really needed to be looked at with a fine-tooth comb. And during that time, we had four committee meetings, so 8 meetings at least altogether as a group. That meeting on March 5th was where we had all finished reviewing it, and we got together to develop what questions we wanted to ask the charter and the board at their capacity interview and to prepare for that, which was held on March 13th, where the director, the CEO, and lead founder came in with his entire board, and they verbally answered a lot of questions that we had. It was just our opportunity to get to meet them. During that time, we did engage in a public survey where we gathered comments from the general public, February 15th through April the 1st, and I'll share those results with you in just a little bit so you can see what they said. And then finally, after that capacity interview, we got together again and reviewed our findings based on what they presented in the capacity interview and came to a consensus. Our last meeting was on April the 2nd, after which I provided you with the written report that hopefully you've had a chance to look through. But the stuff I'm going to hit tonight is a lot of the stuff that was in that report. Okay? So just a reminder, here was the review team. We had 2 parents on the board. We had 2 principals on the board, or on the committee, I'm sorry. We did have a board member. Ms. Maxwell served in a very important role on that team. And then the rest was composed of central office folks with various areas of expertise that could provide a lot of insight into the various parts of that application. So just as a summary of that application, again, the school is called Nova Smart Academy, K through 8. And initially, if you read deep enough into that application, they do plan at some point to consider opening a high school, depending upon the success of the K-8 school. Sponsor, they have none. They are operating on their own. They do not work under a charter management organization. The proposed location of the school is Smyrna and Laverne, and it says that in the application, so they are bound, if you approve it, to locate in Smyrna and Laverne. And they do have some intended locations we'll cover here in a minute. Their mission, according to the application, is that they will provide all scholars access to a rigorous curriculum, high-quality academic instruction that fosters a love for learning, embraces innovation and creativity, and encourages personal growth to thrive in their chosen college and career paths, making a positive impact on society, which is very aligned with our mission to invest in students to provide for tomorrow's possibilities. Number of schools currently in operation for them, again, none. They are a New Start charter. If approved, this will be the only one in operation. Okay? So here's a summary of what their proposed enrollment is going to look like. You'll note they start in year 1, 25-26 with only kindergarten. 4 kindergarten classes, 88 students, and each year they add an additional grade level until they reach full capacity of 902 in year 9, K through 8. And starting in year 5, you'll notice they do add an additional kindergarten, the next year additional first, and then additional third, and then additional fourth, and so on until they reach that full capacity. I do believe that 66 number for 3rd grade in year 7 is a typo. It should say 88 like the rest of them. That's just a typo.
I have a question.
Yes.
Why does it go on year 5 to 110? Are they adding more seats?
Yes.
Okay.
They're adding an additional class in kindergarten that year, and then you'll notice the next year they add an additional 1st grade, and then the next year additional 2nd, and so on. Okay? So they'll basically end up with 5 classes in K through 4, and then it looks like probably 3 classes in 5 through 8 based on number,
I have a question. I'm sorry.
depending on how big they want their classes to be.
I am so sorry to pick this apart all of a sudden. But I'm confused on year 7 for 3rd grade because it went 88, 88, 88, 66. So are they going down in enrollment?
No, that's a typo. I think that's a typo, like I was saying. I believe
you
that's
just
a
said that?
typo.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I believe that's a typo, yeah.
I'm sorry.
No worries.
I was really concentrated on looking at this graph.
It's a lot to focus on, I get it. It's a lot to go through. No apology necessary. Again, a brief description there. They're proposing a new K-8 school in Rutherford County, Smyrna Laverne. They have identified a possible facility. They've got a couple of them listed in their application, but they're really looking at the one at 102 Ridley Street in Smyrna. It's a church that has previously operated a preschool in that building. Again, they're applying as a New Start charter with no other locations currently being proposed even or in operation. And their vision, we talked about their mission, their vision is similar. It's to inspire all scholars to unlock their full potential through extraordinary learning experiences that lead to successful college journeys and fulfilling careers. empowering them to make a positive impact on society and achieve extraordinary success in all aspects of life. And then the CEO and building leader himself, this is his idea. Jeremy Sager really is building this from the ground up. He put together a proposed board of directors to oversee the operation of the school and the performance of the leader himself. So he has compiled a pretty extensive board, and we'll look at them and talk about them in just a minute. So let's get straight to the point. The summary of the evaluation: the review committee recommends denial of the initial application for Nova Smart Academy because they failed to meet or exceed the criteria of the rubric in all three areas. So those three areas are academic plan, operations plan, and financial plan. The committee rated them as partially meeting the standard in each one of those. Now, there's a lot of strengths in it that we'll talk about, but they did not hit that coveted level of meet or exceeds. And according to the state, you have to meet or exceed in all three areas. Even one not reaching that level requires that we not recommend they be approved. So that's why we're recommending initial denial of their application. So let's talk about what those areas of concern and areas of strength are. Starting with section 1, the academic plan and capacity. This one's a pretty extensive section, probably the biggest section of the whole application. And here's our concerns. First of all, we have a concern about the lack of research-based evidence supporting the claim providing a rigorous curriculum. They're required per application to show how their chosen methods and materials have been proven effective with their intended student population. And they don't provide enough research and enough evidence to show that what they're proposing is going to work with their population. They have a lot of great methodologies and a lot of great strategies listed, but they have to be supported by research. A concern that we have is on some of their curriculum choices, ELA. They've chosen an ELA a program that is not on the state list of approved texts. Now, a charter school does not have to choose materials that are on the state approved list. They can ask for a waiver from that, and they have. But the materials that they chose reflect a reader and writer workshop model, which is not supported by current reading research science as best practice. He assures me, though, that it does address Tennessee content standards. Again, though, since it's not on the state list, that's a question. The science curriculum that they have chosen is Generation Genius, which is not really a curriculum. It's a support program that's video-based and computer-based. A lot of our schools in our district use it as a support. It is not a text, and it is not on the approved list of text. But that's all they're indicating in the way of science curriculum. Okay? Then another hallmark of their application is their intended two-teacher model. While it is very innovative and it sounds great to help reduce their student-to-pupil ratio, it's a little misleading, because it's not two teachers. It's one certified teacher, and the second one is listed as either an educational assistant or a teacher in training. Now, it's still two adults, but that can be a little bit misleading to say, my child is going to have two teachers in the classroom when only one of them really is a certified teacher. Just a little misleading. It's still a great model, but it's misleading. Details related to the knowledge and implementation plan for the RTI framework. Their RTI model does not indicate specific strategies and materials. We're not really sure what is going to happen during Tier 1 and Tier 2 interventions. I'm sorry, Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions. They do indicate that in the plan, but they don't say what they're going to do during that time. They do list one computer program, IXL, which kind of leads us to worry that maybe they're just going to put kids on computers. Okay, so that's just a concern. They need a little bit more detail in what exactly the RTI framework is going to look like, and I think they can provide that. The survey results, which we're going to look at here in a minute, and a lack of commitments to enroll indicates community support is not evident. They've only received, as of the capacity interview, 3 commitments to enroll, only 3. Their target is 10 a month, starting at the first of the year, so they should be significantly beyond that by now, and they've only got 3, to my knowledge. Okay. Continuing with our concerns, one is that their sole curriculum for 8th grade math is integrated math. They're not offering another option, which is a very lofty target. We get that. I think it would, to say that they're going to prepare every student by the time they're in 8th grade to be ready for integrated math is great. But you'll notice in the first year, 8th graders come to this school. That's their first year in this school. So they have had nothing to prepare them ahead of time from that school. Plus, we know that it's very difficult to qualify for integrated math, even in our magnet schools, in our schools here, and traditional public schools. Not every child qualifies for integrated math, and there has to be a provision for standard 8th grade math instruction, and there's not included in their application. Also, their TVOS goals, they don't have really any true TVOS goals, and we know TVOS value-added scores play a huge component in the overall report card grade for a school and the overall evaluation score for a teacher. They do have growth goals, and they do have some that they say are labeled with TVOS goals, but they're not listed in the 1 through 5 TVOS terminology. They're basically achievement goals focused on increasing the number of students who have reached on track or mastery, and that's achievement, not growth. Plus, those terms, on track and mastery, are outdated. We no longer use those terms, so it would need to be updated to reflect the current meets or exceeds terminology. SPED services are a concern. There's some gaps there, particularly in procedures and how to identify students and deliver those services. They do indicate that all services will be provided in the inclusion setting, which we all endeavor to serve our special ed kids in the general ed setting with inclusion services. We do think that's the best setting for the vast majority of them. It's the least restrictive environment, but there are no contingency plans really for providing for students of much higher need. If they receive some structured setting students, how are they going to serve those? They don't really identify that, okay? Also, in their plan to evaluate students for special needs, there's some gaps there. They plan to contract out for a significant number of services without really indicating who they're contracting with or any partnerships that have been identified. And the evaluation process does not include a school psychologist, except for gifted students for some reason. And that just leads to some worries of violating IDEA and setting us up for some pretty serious liability there. Gaps in the plan to deliver services and monitor various levels of ELL, English Language Learners, is probably our biggest academic concern for the school. Their ELL plan is just not adequate, and we know that the area of intended service, the north end of the county, is very heavy in English language learners. They need to shore up their plans to monitor individual learning plans. There's no provision for how they're going to be monitored, those ILPs, using appropriate screening procedures, determination of eligibility, and monitoring of students who have exited from services. We know they have to be monitored for a certain number of years afterwards. That's not provided for in the plan. Okay? Also, the application does need to be updated to the ELPA 21 platform rather than WIDA. The state is moving away from WIDA into ELPA 21 now. In their defense, they may not have known that when they wrote the application. But one thing I want to emphasize is that when you approve them, whatever's in that application is all they're required to do. And we are liable as a board, as a school system, for what is in that application and what is not in the application too. So that's an important consideration to make. There's a tremendous amount of liability on our part because we're the authorizers, we oversee it. And what's in that plan, what you approve, that becomes the plan. What's in that application, okay? All right, so let's take a look at a little bit of due diligence that we did in researching what we could about the school and their academic programs. Here is a list of several schools that they indicate as being academic models, instructional models for what they are going to do, what they are planning on doing, some of the programs they're going to use and the methodologies they're going to use. I'd like you to take a look at the gray columns that are the report card grade from 22 and the report card grade from 23. And you'll notice they range from A's all the way down to D's, which is really not different than Rutherford County schools in that area of the county. And really a charter school is supposed to intend to provide a better setting and a more effective setting. You know, so the report card grades, some are good, some are not so good. I'll draw your attention to a couple though. Valor Flagship and Valor Voyager Academy, those two in the middle, those are key resources for this school, and they are very highly effective. If you'll notice, they've got all 5s and all A's. And the difference is we changed our scoring system from 22 to 23, from numbers to letters. Okay, that's why it looks different, but 5's good and 8's good.
Don't get me started on that.
I know, yes, sir. Hold on. I do want to draw your attention to the two orange shaded Purpose Prep and Memphis Merit Academy. Those are the two schools that they intend to model their literacy instruction after. And you'll notice there's some variances there between the two. One of them has high growth but low achievement. One of them has low growth and high achievement. So there's just some differences there which is interesting because they're patterning their literacy instruction after those two schools. The yellow schools are ones where Dr. Sager has actually worked. Take a look at Nashville Prep 22, that top yellow line. That's where he was last principal. And he is known for taking that school in 1 year's time from a growth level of 1 to a level 5 in 1 year. The problem for them was they didn't have him for very long. He moved on, but he did do a great job in that 1 year. And in checking on his... It's not, okay, just, I know it's not me. But he did do a lot of great things in that school from what I hear. Also, the ones down at the bottom, that Gestalt PCA High School in Memphis, he was the 9th grade principal, the 9th grade academy principal, and we don't have scores from back then. The most scores we have are just the recent ones that are D's and C's. And then in the other yellow school, Gestalt PCA Mid and Lead Neely's Bend, he was an instructional dean at both of those schools. So those are ones that he has worked at. And the rest of them, though, again, are all just models of instruction for what they pattern their school after. Okay, I just wanted to share that with you. Now let's take a look at the results of the community survey that we did that ran for about 6 weeks. We had 287 respondents to it. The vast majority of those were parents or guardians of an RCS student, so that, definitely had a stake in it. The next biggest group were educators that responded. There were 15 who classified themselves as other and 3 community stakeholders. Overwhelmingly, 72% said they do not support authorization of Novus. And we did send out an attachment to the application with the survey, so those that wanted to take the time could actually review the application. No guarantee they all did, but they had that opportunity. And then 28% said they do support authorization of Novus. And take a look at how they voted by stakeholder group. You'll notice that there is a significant discrepancy between do and do not support for parents and guardians and educators. It's not as big a gap in others, and interestingly enough, community stakeholders kind of flipped the table a little bit. Even though only 3 responded, 2 said they do support, and 1 said they did not. And some of the comments that we received, and again, keep in mind that these comments are reflective of the most often mentioned topics, okay? I chose the ones that were mentioned more often than not. Strengths of the application, some people said more options for parents and students. And I think a lot of people look at this as another great option. A lot of them said none, there are no strengths. Some people said that the school is definitely needed in the area to serve the Laverne and Smyrna population. They also like the smaller classroom ratio with more one-on-one with an educator and a focus on academics and positive thinking. Areas of concern were obviously taking money from our public schools. A lot of people said they had no concerns. Not enough support for special populations. And that echoes some of the findings of the committee themselves. And so do the next 2. Curriculum chosen is not highly effective, has outdated ideas, and did not have a strong academic program. And then lastly, board has no elementary educators, which we will address here. I'll talk about in just a second. Not exactly true, but it is a concern. Okay. So those are all the concerns and questions that the board had, or that the committee had. Here are the strengths that we found, and there were a lot. There's a clear mission and vision that articulated the focus on the core values of the school. They continually mention their focus on providing a culturally relevant curriculum to those students. And everything about their application really aligns clearly with their mission and vision. Everything they do really aligns with it. And their application actually addressed all 6 purposes of the charter school per state law. Remember I said they only have to address 3 that we read through them at the beginning? Well, they address all 6. And their application aligns very well with our RCS performance frameworks. And in some instances, they're actually a little bit more rigorous. Okay? The capacity interview itself revealed a shared passion and commitment of the board. We found them to be a very genuine group of people who are in this for the right reasons and not in this for themselves, and really are committed to providing a quality optional school for the kids in Rutherford County. And then the proposed calendar itself really is a bonus for them. They are planning to extend school through the end of June and offer 195 instructional days as opposed to the normally required 180. And their school day itself is going to be 8.5 hours long, 4 days a week. The only exception to that is on Wednesdays when they'll dismiss 2 hours early to provide time for teachers to collaborate and have professional development and analyze student performance data. Okay. So that wraps up Section 1, our findings from Section 1. Let's take a look at Section 2, which is the operations plan and capacity. Some concerns with that particular section were the safety and security of the facility, capacity for crisis planning. The security is a big concern for us because the application does not go into very much depth as far as how they're going to provide a safe and secure environment for the kids. They indicate hiring of security personnel. Well, no, they don't indicate hiring of any security personnel, including an SRO. It's not called for in the plan. And they do say that security will be present at all doors. We don't know what that security is because it doesn't say, and it's not provided for in the budget, so we can only assume it's going to be teachers manning the doors. There is some concern if they choose that intended location of that church in Smyrna, which they don't have to. They have several options, but that's their primary target right now. There is concerns with an intermingling of church business, church personnel, and the school itself. They talked about addressing that in the capacity interview, but there are no clear plans in the application for how to make sure of that. Okay? Now, the timeline. The timeline, if they choose this facility, to make renovations is very tight. According to the application, they plan to engage with inspectors and architects in January of 25, start renovations in March. That only gives them, and be done by June, that only gives them about 3 months to complete renovations, which is an extremely tight timeline, especially if they ended up with another facility as well. I will say this, and I had Dr. Sager come in and sit down with me yesterday because I wanted him to hear the findings too ahead of time, so there were no surprises. He did indicate that that timeline is a little bit more robust than that, and they've already engaged in some of those opportunities, but the application does not say that. And remember, what we approve is in that application, and that's what they have to do is what's in the application, okay? And then the capacity of school leadership to provide transportation as planned, and they do plan to provide transportation. Our concern there, though, is that the budget only calls for 1 school bus, which we know that a charter school can accept or has to accept applicants from anywhere in the county, and having only 1 bus in the budget raises some concerns for us. And whether or not they'll be able to meet the requirement that kids spend less than an hour and a half on a bus. And the last thing we want to do is have kids spend an hour and a half on a bus and then 8.5 hours a day in school on top of that. So, and there's no expertise on the board for transportation systems or routing or anything like that. So we are concerned about their capacity, okay? But you'll find out that that's a bit of a strength too. And our last concerns are, this was mentioned in the survey, a lack of elementary experience on the board and with leadership. And talking with Dr. Sager, it does appear that one of the board members did have some elementary teaching experience. Dr. Sager himself and the rest of the board, their educational experience is at the middle school and high school level and some collegiate. Our concern is there, what are they starting with? Kindergarten. Kindergarten is a totally different game. So that's just a concern, although we think he's a great guy, but that's just a concern. Novus, and again, this is just something to consider. They will be a New Start charter with no record of experience or success. This is their first rodeo, so to speak. So we'd be taking a bit of a leap of faith based on the application, again, that they've submitted. Okay? So, strengths, though. There were some strengths in the operations plan and capacity. We do think that even though we're concerned about their capacity to do it, the offering of transportation as an option for families is a huge bonus for them, and we think it will go a long way in helping to recruit students and families to be a part of their school, particularly in the north end of the county where a lot of those parents are going to need that transportation provided. They do have good plans to recruit high-quality teachers. Dr. Sager himself has a variety of resources to call upon and a variety of sources for people that intentionally develop and provide teachers for a charter school setting. He's got a lot of resources there. Professional development plans for the staff are extremely intensive and extensive. They start with about a month's worth of planning ahead of time before that first year ever starts. And then again, every Wednesday, each week, Wednesday afternoons are reserved for PD, teachers meeting, and analyzing student data. And all of their PD really focuses on their mission, their vision, and the analysis of student performance. So really good, strong professional development plans. The board and leadership, we mentioned their commitment to the whole process. They really are committed, like I say, and their hearts are definitely in the right place. This is not something that they're doing for personal gain. It is clear. They're doing this for the children in Rutherford County. And the CEO, the building leader, Dr. Sager himself, really is a bonus. It's a plus for this school. I've mentioned this before, but he was recruited and trained by BES, that's Build, Excel, Sustain, which is a group that intentionally recruits and trains people to open and operate charter schools and has had quite a bit of success with that. A lot of those schools that I put up there on the boards had BES written beside them because they are a BES-supported school. And they provide a lot of resources and support for him and will continue to do so. Okay? All right, section 3. The last one, an important one, high accountability for charters for their financial plan and their capacity. Here are our concerns. Number one, there were some shortcomings and inaccuracies within the budget worksheet that I found along with Ms. Kaywood in the accounting department. Most of those were due to the fact that the state template they used the formulas did not work correctly and the data did not populate and pull over as it should, so they had some mismatching numbers. I would have hoped they would have found those before they submitted it and not left it up to me to find those, but I did. And I got back with them, and to their credit, they corrected them post-haste, but they did not know they were there. In their correction of those, again, the formulas are not working. They had to hand input a lot of those numbers to get them to match. And I do believe it's a function or a misfunction of the state-provided template, and I have communicated that to the State Department so that they are aware and can fix the problem. But regardless, the fact that they didn't catch those before they submitted it kind of lends some concern over the thoroughness of the process of putting a budget together for this proposal. Okay? Contingencies for funding depend somewhat on donations, a line of credit, vendor credit, credit cards. That's very typical for the first year of operation for a charter school, that year 0, before they're getting any student funds. They almost have to operate on credit ahead of, to get a little bit of ahead. But that is a concern if you're going to open a school with credit cards. It's just something that the committee was a little bit concerned about. Okay? And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And then the failure to budget for indicated stipends and support positions. The plan or their application says that they're going to pay performance bonuses for teachers that do well. They're going to pay stipends for extra duties, and they're going to pay teachers to provide after-school tutoring for students that need it. It's not reflected in the budget. And again, the budget only goes through the first 5 years, but I would assume that would get started sometime in the first 5 years. Okay? All right. Strengths of that financial planning capacity. First of all, they do have several board members with some financial acumen. They have 2 accountants on the board, and since the issue with the budget template arose, in meeting with Dr. Sager yesterday, they have added a 3rd person on board to help monitor the financial operation of the school. So that's a plus that they really have people on board that can do that. In addition, the board also has a lot of other business expertise, too, that I think will come into play and be helpful to them as well. They have already been awarded a CSP grant of $750,000 over the first 3 years. That's $250,000 a year. That is confirmed. They have secured a BES startup grant of $30,000. And the board themselves, the members are committed to donating $10,000 of their personal money if they get approved. And they do have a possible $1 million interest-free line of credit. Now, if that is substantiated, that's pretty significant. There are some questions that we have about that. The initial company that they said that was through that has been dissolved by the state. So we think that person is working for somebody else. That just needs to be updated to say that, okay, to where that money is coming from. Okay, that covers all of our strengths and concerns over the three sections of the charter application. So just a reminder, for those reasons, we have rated them as partially meets the standards in all three, and as a result, we have to recommend denial of the initial application. Okay, because again, they have to be meets or exceeds in all three areas for us to recommend approval. That's per state policy. Okay. Just a couple of reminders. State Board of Education rules say that a quality authorizer implements a comprehensive application process, which we have done. Includes clear application questions and guidance, follows fair, transparent procedures. I've shared all this with Dr. Sager. Rigorous criteria. I think we did adopt some rigorous criteria in our review, and grants charters only to applicants who demonstrate strong capacity to establish and operate a quality charter school. Only to those who demonstrate that. And again, State Board of Education rule says the quality authorizer requires all applicants to present a clear, compelling mission. We think they've done that. Quality educational program. We did have some questions about that. Demonstration of community support. Again, you saw the results of the survey. Solvent and sustainable budget, and contingency financial plans. Clear demonstration of the effectiveness of the model for the target student population. Remember, we said that the research just wasn't there yet to support its effectiveness with that target population. Effective governance and management structures and systems. Founding team members demonstrating diverse and necessary capabilities in all phases of the school's development. We do think that's present. And clear evidence of the applicant's capacity to execute its plan successfully. Clear evidence. And then finally, just a reminder that a quality authorizer, and that's us, that's you, the authorizer, grants charters only to applicants that have demonstrated competence and capacity to succeed in all aspects of their particular charter school model, consistent with the state approval criteria. Okay? So what are our next steps? According to the board policy 1.901, which is kind of patterned after the state school board's policies, first of all, we have to evaluate all charter school applications based on the review criteria adopted by the board. Check, done. And then number two, we are tasked with recommending to you one of the following options for each application. Either approve it outright as is, reject it as is, or reject with specific stipulations for reconsideration. Now, with either of those last two options, reject with stipulations, they can go back and amend their application and resubmit, like we said, within 30 days. That reject with stipulations for reconsideration is a little bit softer blow in that it provides some real specific things that they need to add to the agenda or the application to shore it up, to make sure it meets the criteria that are expected. Okay? So our committee is going to recommend that you reject with stipulations for reconsideration to give them the opportunity to make those corrections. If you vote to do that, I will provide them with those specific stipulations. The committee has already taken a look at some of those. We've already put a lot of those together. We'll be able to get on that pretty quick. Okay, so that's our recommendation, is to reject with stipulations for reconsideration. So now, it's in your hands. At some point before the 30th, you have to generate a motion and take a vote to either approve or deny the application from Nova Smart Academy, or it will be automatically approved if you don't vote by the 30th. Our hope is that you feel prepared enough to do that on Thursday's board meeting. If not, you would probably have to call a special meeting within the next week after that just to meet that deadline. Okay? Lastly, there's the timeline. You're at that LEA vote stage, and again, if you deny them, they have 30 days to resubmit. We have 60 days to review, and you can approve it, or if you deny it again, they can appeal to the commission within 10 days. So, any questions?
Any questions?
Madam Chairwoman.
Yes, Claire?
I sat on with them, and they were very impressive, I have to say, and they did have a really good heart. And Dr. Sanger, if he wasn't opening up a school, we should hire him, because he was that impressive. I appreciate your recommendations. I think that is the right call to make. When you met with him about some of this, did he seem dejected? Did he seem like, I understand, we can fix this?
He seemed very understanding and very
Okay.
welcoming of the feedback that I gave him and the direction for where he would need to go. And very thankful for the fact that I could provide him with specific stipulations to meet in the application itself. Yes, there was no defensiveness. There was no denying of any of it, no trying to tell me I was wrong. He was very, very genuine. Again, Dr. Sager is a very genuine person. So.
Thank you.
Mr. Tidwell?
A question about the $1 million line of credit. Do you think that would be more secure between now and the next recommendation?
Yes, I would hope so. In my discussion with him yesterday about that, he was not aware that new Neighbor Group LLC, which is where it originated from, had been dissolved by the state. But he was more familiar with the contact person that worked for them. And Ms. Kaywood in accounting has researched that person, and she knows that she has moved to another legitimate company, and we think that's where the funding will come from, but that has to be clarified. And that will definitely be one of the stipulations that I provide them, that it has to be shored up.
Just checking. Dr. Sullivan?
So something that we've talked about with our Rutherford County delegation, it is going to be even more extremely challenging until we or the legislature changes how funding is done from being funded up front. So this would, at 88 students, you're looking at another $880,000 roughly that we would have to upfront the cost of for the next year. I know that's not part of this process, but it's something as a director of schools I have to look at because we're funded in arrears and charter schools are funded up front. And so it's unfortunate, but that's the way it is right now.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Ms. Bratton,
Yes, ma'am.
when is this going to be on the agenda to vote on? Thursday?
April 3rd, yeah, 18th.
So he seemed receptive to making changes,
Very much.
that he make the changes and,
Yes, there was confidence there.
okay.
Anyone else? Mr. Tidwell?
Question about the stipulations. How quickly could we see those? I mean, I'm sure you don't already have those.
Tomorrow,
Oh, okay,
I
great.
can probably provide those for you tomorrow.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, happy to do it.
Is that it?
Anything else?
Thank you so much,
Thank y'all
Mr.
for your
McCann.
time. I'm sorry I took so long.
No, that's okay.
Great.
To go through, I know.
You did a great job. We appreciate it. Ready for number 2?
So we mentioned this at our last board meeting, the Health and Opioid Prevention and Education Curriculum, or the HOPE curriculum. Curriculum Instruction Department's requesting the use of a supplemental opioid prevention curriculum to be used to support our Tennessee academic standards. The Health and Opioid Prevention Curriculum has been vetted by our department and has been deemed to be a developmentally and age-appropriate curriculum that includes instruction on the dangers of prescription opioid abuse and addiction to other drugs. It is a large curriculum, but you'll see in elementary school, it's only grade 5 curriculum that we're looking at. This was approved by the abatement board by the county commission first because they had to approve the funding and they need to come before you all because it's curriculum. Then the county commission approved the funding for it at the very next meeting that they had as well. So this is looking at the curriculum aspect. We're already doing opioid awareness at some of our schools in the Smyrna-Laverne area, and this is looking to expound on that a little bit further.
Okay. Questions? No one? All right. Now look at number 10.
Yep. So I'll read each one and then stop after each one. Does that
Yeah,
good?
I think that the best thing to do with this is tonight, just read each one, then we'll stop, take questions, concerns, whatever, and then go to the next one. That way we'll get them all discussed tonight. Okay? All right, go right ahead.
All right, so this is policy adoption, and this is the first of 2 readings. Policies below are recommended on the first reading. These policies will be brought at the next scheduled board meeting for a second and final reading, and I believe that is May 9th.
Night.
First, we have policy 1.404, appeals to and appearances before the board. This adds language: speakers addressing the board must be on items on the agenda.
Okay, we'll stop and have questions or comments. Mr. Tidwell?
Yes, as I mentioned previously, whenever we was discussing this, I would hope the board would consider possibly not moving forward with this policy just because it appears to be addressing an issue that we don't have. We don't have speakers lined up to speak at every board meeting. We don't have people going off the rails about astrology, unless we're having an eclipse, and all these other items. So I think it sends a bad signal after what happened during COVID and some of the changes that were made there. And most of the board has been changed out since then. I, for one, was very much bothered during that time. And that was one of the fueling points for me running today, is to make sure that we are not moving in that direction. So we want to send the right signal to the parents, and I hope the board would consider that.
Thank you. Who else? Someone else have? Ms. Darby?
I know when this was brought up at the policy committee meeting, it was largely spoke about to be in line with state law. And we did receive a letter from the author of the bill herself stating that we were in compliance with state law and that her intention was never to restrict it just to germane items, that was a local level decision. So I too am wondering if the board is agreeable to pulling it off, because the reason stated for doing it is now really null and void. We're in compliance with state law, so it doesn't make sense given the argument why it was brought to begin with.
We can't pull it off tonight.
No, not tonight. Okay. No, I'm just.
I thought, okay, no voting, okay. All right, that is your suggestion. And you
Yes.
can bring that up on Thursday night, okay. Anyone else? Okay,
Oh, Mr. Young just raised his finger.
pardon me? Oh, I'm sorry. Hoy Young, I am deaf, speak up.
One thing I'd like to point out is our policy committee did bring this to the board with the overwhelming support. I think there was only 3 that voted against this, so I do think we need to seriously consider this, and I just know in the last 4 or 5 years I've been on this board, there seems to be a lot of political grandstanding. We're more focused on politics than we are the real issues with our school system. And that, to me, sends the wrong message, period. So I do think we need to really consider this policy.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Ms. Braden.
Yes, sir.
I'd just like to point out that the policy committee is not a voting body. They are a recommendation. So the board here makes the final decision. And again, what are we actually addressing? That's the question on the table. If it's not fixing anything, then what are we addressing? So those in favor of it, I would love to hear an answer to that. Whether that's tonight or Thursday, doesn't matter to me. But.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. B.
B, policy 1.901, charter school applications, changes date of recommendation and appointment of review team from December to January. What this does is allows us to know how many charter applicants we already have, or we actually have, before we announce those teams.
Okay. Do we have any questions or comments on B? C.
Policy 3.202, emergency preparedness plan, adds training for substitute teachers.
Questions on that? No one. D.
Policy 4.406, use of internet, adds language for additional prohibited and illegal activities for employees and students.
Questions on that policy? D. E.
Policy 5.106, application and employment, removes the pre-employment physical examination requirement, but adds in that if needed to fill out job duties, we can request.
Okay. Anyone have a question on that? F.
This is policy 5.303, personal and professional leave, updates language for personal leave for certified employees.
Questions, comments on that one?
I make one.
Yes, sir, you may.
So this came up, we have a teacher advisory council that meets monthly or every 6 weeks roughly, and professional leave came up. During that conversation, it was, can sick days be used as professional leave days and annual leave days and vice versa? Can we do something like that? Initially, that sounds like a great idea, but when you are looking at it from when somebody ends their years of service in Tennessee or transfers to another state, sick days are what are transferred. And so, as much as I would love for us to be able to just say that their leave days, take them for you need, in order for someone to be able to use them for retirement and those type of things, that's not an option. So that gets brought up.
days.
Yep, professional leave days, employees get 2 a year.
Right. Anyone else? That was good explanation, thank you. G,
Policy 5.308, sabbatical leave, updates language for sabbatical leave for certified and classified employees.
anyone have questions on that? H,
H, Policy 6.3041, Title IX and sexual harassment, changes timeline for notice of before beginning investigation and changes timeline for completion of investigations.
Ms. Darby, did you want to comment on
I can wait until Thursday.
that? Okay. You sure?
Yes, ma'am. Okay, thank you.
I,
I, Policy 6.402, physical examinations and immunizations. Is it this one, Ms. Ridley, or is it the next one? The next one, you're correct. So this one adds physical examination requirement for clubs that involve physical exertion or athletic activity.
it's the next one you want to talk about, right?
No, I think it's this one. So this one I would like to make a change to. We discussed during policy for it to include performance band. And so in talking to Dr. Halford, there's no such thing as performance band. The other aspect of that in wording was that marching band and band activities are a core content class. And so in order for us to require a physical, we need to do some more discussion on how do we require that for a course, and then who's going to pay for it and what happens if a kid and a parent says no. And so we don't have that for taking biology or math or
Right.
anything else. So how could we enforce that? So I'd recommend that we remove that portion and just move forward right now with the other aspects.
Okay? So take out the performance band, okay.
I think the thought was that March Band, there is physical activity, but I understand.
Right,
And that may be something we still need to add, but we need to look through some logistics first. So thank you.
makes sense, though.
Thank you,
was
Dr.
a good
Halford, for
idea.
bringing that to our attention.
J,
J, Policy 6.413, Prevention and Treatment of Sports-Related Concussion, adds clarifying language for removal from athletics due to a concussion.
and then we have new policies, K,
Policy 2.9002, Site Selection and Acquisition, Policy for School Site Selection and Acquisition.
questions or comments? And L,
L is Policy 3.2052, School Resource Officers and Nursing Staff Participation in Safety Days, Policy for Participation of SROs and Nursing Staff in Safety Days annually.
questions or concerns? All right. Did that cover, Ms. Darby, did that cover what you wanted to do by dividing that? Did that cover what you wanted to discuss? Okay, just wanted to make sure. All right, number 2,
Number 2 is under Human Resources, Climate Survey Resilient Schools Grant. So we had a Resilient School Grant that we accepted from the Tennessee Department of Education. Part of that is doing a school climate survey that the state has used for at least 10 to 12 years. It's voluntary. It requires active consent for a parent or a child to be able to do it, and it is all online. I'll have Amy Baltimore here on Thursday to be able to answer questions as well. She just could not be here tonight. It is a requirement for the grant. If we choose not to move forward with it, then we just would not apply for the grant next year. I don't think the state would require us to pay it back, but theoretically they could. It's about $200,000, so if we had to pay it back, we could.
and Amy will be here on
Yes.
Thursday? Okay.
And just so everyone knows, being fully clear, so the state wanted us to go ahead and move forward with this without board approval, and we made sure that they knew absolutely not, we're not moving forward without board approval. They're like, it's just a signature. I said, we are not moving forward without the board approving this.
Thank you.
Yep.
Number 2,
Number
your
2 is great,
recommendation.
and if the board is okay, I would much rather not read every one of these names
That's okay.
as much as a
Yes,
celebration.
I'd much rather you
would be.
did not.
But this is the 23-24 tenure recommendation. The following teachers meet criteria for tenure in accordance with tenure law, and here's your tenure law. You have to hold a valid Tennessee teaching license, has served Rutherford County Schools for 5 years, 45 months minimum within a 7-year period, the last 2 in a regular, not interim position, has demonstrated an overall performance of above expectations or significantly above expectations on the team evaluation during the last 2 consecutive years of the 5-year period, or if they held tenure under the previous guidelines and returned to Rutherford County Schools, they meet the 2-year probationary period and tenure is reactivated. When you see people that are in administrative positions, whether at the school or at the central office, they are tenured in the teaching or the services role they're in, not in a leadership position. And so if you see an assistant principal, the only thing you get is tenure as a teacher. You don't get tenure as an administrator. It doesn't exist.
Sure doesn't. How many did we have? Tell me again. 2.
248.
How many? 248 and 9 reinstatement.
So it is a good trend because during COVID, we lost quite a few teachers, and this is showing that almost probably 8% of our teaching force is back over during this time period of earning 5 years experience. So that's a good trend.
Also shows how beautifully our system does, because you cannot get this if you're not a 4 or a 5. And so that shows how beautifully we combine to be a level 5 district. And we thank you for that, Dr. Sullivan. Engineering and construction.
Mr. Reed, I may need your help on this part because we had a meeting today, and we're not going to go too far into the weeds because it is further discussions that are happening. But this is the Beatty Farm property in the City of Murfreesboro revised transportation plan, and this is more for information only for today. But Rutherford County Schools and the City of Murfreesboro currently have a development agreement for sewer service to property outside the city limits. This agreement has additional language not typically included in this type of agreement, with very specific requests for roadway improvements and other items. Staff has developed plans and has approval from the Rutherford County Engineering Department that we meet the agreement and the traffic impact study for short-term development. There are several recommendations for now that are current developmental traffic requirements and some that are future developmental requirements. We've met with the city, we met internally as a team with several elected officials with the county again today and several attorneys, and we are continuing to have those discussions. One of the requests from the city is to amend our agreement. Amending an agreement is definitely something that is on the table, but amending a previous agreement that's beneficial to one party and not another is something that we need to have further conversation on, probably an executive session at some point, if it gets to that point. City did brief their staff at the April 11th workshop regarding this issue and kind of talked about a little bit further of what the expectations were and what they were planning. I know you've got some road designs and some road items. Do you want to go over them, Trey? Kind of where we were. Mr. Reed, what do you advise since you were in the meeting today?
I was just going to show the board the 2 things that the city had requested and show them what we had provided and leave it at that. I think that's good.
Okay.
John? In your packet and also online, online. I didn't print it all tonight, and if you'd like it, I can print it for you on Thursday. Basically, these are drawings, and this is what this is showing. Currently, and that's my handwriting from our meeting with the city when Mr. Reed and I met with them a few weeks back. This is the proposed circulation for the Beatty project. This is the roads that we will be installing for the elementary. There's additional roads on our site that will be utilized for the middle school. This all meets or exceeds, a lot of it exceeds, the traffic impact study for us to be able to get additional cars off the street, stack cars, two-way traffic, use our roadways to mitigate the traffic that we have at all complexes in the morning and in the afternoon. We have met with the county engineers. All of these roadway improvements for Blackman Road, which is basically 3 lanes, coming to left turn, right turn, and a right turn in. What is shown in red goes beyond what the traffic impact study shows. The city, when Mr. Reed and I met with them, requested that we three-lane past Blackman Road back toward the Manson Pike Burnt Knob intersection. It's about a quarter to a half a mile. And they proposed that the county pay for that 100%. Eventually, that's going to be a 5-lane road. Part of our work that we're doing, if you look just to the right of all of that red work, we are building a 5-lane section from our intersection that's between the proposed elementary and middle. And what you don't see is the further drawing where we go past our property going to the north and continuing with that 5-lane intersection. So we are building a fairly significant section, 5 lanes, and the taper at the request of the traffic study and also at the request of the county engineering department.
Can I stop you right there?
Sure.
So as part of our concern is we want to make sure we're good partners, but I unfortunately know how this plays out publicly, or at least anticipate how this plays out publicly. We borrowed money for the Beatty property. We put in $34 million as a school system to put in for the Beatty property. It goes, let's say that an agreement is amended for us to put more funding towards this. That's not necessarily the school system's responsibility, is to build that portion. However, when it gets mentioned in public, it's going to be the school system caused this and you didn't budget enough money for your roads. And so we're trying to get out in front of that to show that there's 2 huge developments on that road as well that are causing traffic each and every day before these schools. We even today looked at our school zones to show that a lot of the school zones for the new schools are coming from the north end of the county, because a lot of the south portion of Manson Pike and Blackman Road are staying in the Blackman area. And so that is my concern, that if the county commission wants to fund an agreement and do that, the county commission absolutely is 100% willing, and that may be the greatest and best way to go. I'm very cautious and hopeful that the school system doesn't get blamed for that.
To expound upon that, the traffic impact study currently shows that these improvements will work for the area right adjacent to the school. Historically, that's what the school board has been tasked with building. I've been with the school board now for 17 years, and I've been project manager, overseer of all the schools that have been built in that 17-year period. We have always addressed the impact study for that school on the adjacent areas. We've never been asked to go down to the next corner, go down to the next street. The traffic for this area is pretty much there. Are we increasing the time delay at certain periods of the day because of the traffic for the school? Sure. But typically, this responsibility is what's been on the school board, is what has been asked of us by the county, by the city, by them all. This ask is something new. We've never been asked to extend anything of this nature or this size of undertaking of a road project. John, if you'll show the next slide. The second thing that we were asked, which is this is the intersection of Blackman Road and Manson Pike Burnt Knob. They're requesting everything you see in yellow, and all of that red means 5 lanes with turning radiuses. That's a fairly significant, I'm going to guess somewhere between $5 and $7 million project. Just that intersection. They proposed at that meeting that it be split 50-50. At that time, I expressed my thoughts and opinions with that group, and basically I told them at that time, and Mr. Reed agreed with my statement that we had no authority to make such type of agreement, and that this was beyond typically what the school board typically did. We're not road builders, we're school builders. But in the spirit of being good neighbors, we've always addressed the roads right around the school in whatever capacity, whether it's, we've worked with TDOT, we've worked with the Highway Department, we've worked with the City of Laverne, the City of Smyrna, and the City of Murfreesboro. This is a completely new ask. What I did agree to in that meeting was to come back to this body and inform you all of what the city is requesting. And at that point, I told them if the school board was okay, which they went to it's public knowledge now, they went to the city council last week and it's been published in the paper, so I don't know that I need to go to Health and Ed and tell them what the city's asking. It's out there now. And as Dr. Sullivan stated, I think it's kind of elevated above you guys. But I felt like because I was a party to those meetings that I owed you all a report, and hope that you understand and be glad to answer any additional questions that you may have concerning this request by the city. We do have an agreement with the city for sewer services. There are some specific requests in that agreement that do pertain to road work. And it's not a normal outside the city sewer agreement from the city. They added some things to it. We do feel like we have 95 to 98%, maybe more than that, met that agreement with our drawings. So per Dr. Sullivan, if they want these things and they want to tie it to this project, that agreement would have to be, I guess, agreed upon, or I guess they can say no.
Yeah. Mr. Reed, will you come to that?
And I'll let Mr. Reed kind of take it from
I think
there.
that's
It's
where we
legal.
are now, is the city has paused sewer, and so we're sitting.
The one thing I would add, that it's been an ongoing discussion for a few weeks now, but the city, in the last iteration of this thing, is proposing to do this Manson Pike intersection themselves. So that's something the city is proposing to do, and they've actually put a bid out for the design services for that intersection on their own. So that is not anything they're asking the county to pay for under the most recent proposal. The only intersection that's still an issue is the intersection of Blackman and Baker Road, which is right at the school. And we're in discussions with the county and the city now to see what can get worked out on that. Those are ongoing discussions. We have meetings again this morning on that, so we'll have some ongoing discussions on that, try to get the issue resolved. But the only intersection we're talking about now that's still an issue is the Baker Road and Blackman intersection, because the city is going ahead and making those plan improvements at a fairly substantial cost on the city for the Manson Pike intersection on Blackman Road.
Anyone else?
And I just
Ms. Darby? Sorry.
We can,
Yeah, just real quick, I've asked Mr. Reed to handle all those conversations since it could end up in different areas, so that's why I step out of those and sort of stray. I attend some of the meetings, but usually any type of action goes through Mr. Reed.
Mr. Lee, do you have an idea of the cost for what they're asking for here?
In conversations with the city, we're thinking somewhere between 4 and 5 million maybe for that section. But, and maybe I'm speaking out of turn at this point, if the city's intention is to eventually make that 5-lane, which it is, that's the city and county's intention. And I made this recommendation when we met with them the first time. Why would you go to this expense and aggravate those neighbors and build it 3-lane and then come back in here in a couple of years and build 2 more lanes? Can we not, could there not be some type of agreement, build it 5-lane now, split the cost, maybe the city, county? And there again, I'm kind of stepping out of my lane because we don't typically do this kind of work. But it seems counterproductive to me to go in there and spend that kind of money and then come back and add 2 more lanes. Somebody's going to have to do it if that's what they want is 5 lanes. That's why the requirement beyond us is 5 lanes. And that's why we've built, if the requirement was 3 lanes, I don't need to be building 5 now.
I had a couple questions. So just to kind of reiterate what you're saying here is we are addressing the traffic study results, right? So we're taking care of that portion that we typically take care of. They required some stuff in the sewer agreement that also involved a little bit of road. We also took care of that, which you mentioned, I think, was a little more additional than what we typically do. Is that correct so far?
Correct.
All right, and then,
Mr. Tidwell, one thing I'd add is we have it in that agreement as short-term and long-term. And so one is elementary, one is middle school. And I think part of the city right now wants us to do all of it right now.
that's the part of the amending, is they're wanting to go ahead and tackle both
Which,
sides.
that money, we didn't ask the county to borrow for. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. I
Nope,
just-
that's a good
Since
point.
it's public record, I think that's something that, Mr. Reed, would you agree? That's the big part of the issue, short-term versus long-term.
Basically, they're wanting us to go ahead and address the issue with having both schools on the same property. They wanted us to handle that now instead of later, which we obviously don't have the funding for or included in our budget.
Yes, and I will add that request came in a very similar, not being accusatory. We asked for the county commission to allow us to use 30 million out of our fund balance, which reduced our share, and that amount is very similar to what that shared amount would have been.
Why are they asking for it now? Why didn't they ask for it when we made the agreement? I mean, are they holding, did I hear this correctly? Are they holding the sewer expansion hostage? Okay.
I'm going to let Mr. Reed answer that.
He's giving me that look. He doesn't like what I've said, so I need him to fix what I've said.
The city is, they've told us they're cannot proceed with sewer plan review until the road issues are resolved. That's what they've told us. So, but since that time, we have been working with them to try to resolve the road issues that we have. So that's been an ongoing discussion.
Is this, Mr. Lee, I may need you back in a second, but Mr. Lee, is this holding up progress on the Beatty property?
That's what I was going to ask.
Today, no.
Today, no.
Today, no.
How soon?
Soon.
That's a good answer.
I'd rather him not say explicitly how
There
soon.
you go. Fair enough.
Madam Chair,
Anyone else? Yes, sir?
what if we put our own sewer system in? Do we have enough land?
I'm not sure that we can at this time. I've reached out to a couple of consultants that assisted us back when we were doing this, and I'm not sure that we can now. I'll know more about that tomorrow.
Can you send us an email?
When I hear back from them, yes.
Please, thank you.
Mr. Reed, when are you all supposed to sit down again?
Probably the week after next. We don't have a date scheduled on that yet. I have to reach out to the city and get something set up. Some of the county officials met on it this morning. So there's some work we have to do on the county side of things, and then we'll go back and meet with the city probably the week after next.
Ms. Darby?
Dr. Sullivan, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I think sometimes the public is unaware of some things that happen, and please correct me if I'm wrong. We have had school land that the school board has paid for that has been used for other buildings outside of school buildings, correct?
Correct.
Because to my understanding, we've been told, well, it's all county money.
Correct.
So I'm just kind of wondering why this isn't looked at in the same sense, why that road can't
I would
belong
hope it
to-
would be, but based on what happened at Plainview, usually it ends up coming back as the school system's fault.
Just interesting how it all seems to come back.
Usually
This
does
way.
because we're usually the ones with the biggest pockets.
I just don't want because you were talking about, trying to work together in good faith and all that. I want people to know, like, school land has been used for other purposes, and
Yep, and I know I've brought it up before. I'm more than willing, and we should be more than willing to work when there's a partnership that goes both ways. Yes, it is a personal connection because my kid plays on a baseball team, but when I'm also going to have to look to fund and go with the county rec department and find a way to move for 2 baseball and 2 softball teams because the city is no longer allowing us to use those facilities, it's hard to partner when the partnership usually only goes one way. And I hope that changes, and maybe elected officials can get together and make that change, but it usually seems to go one way, unfortunately.
Tidwell?
You can stop me if this is more of an executive session type question here, but, so, we have an agreement for the sewer, previously. They're wanting us to come back and amend that agreement for them to let us to continue to carry out the agreement we previously had. Is that a fair way of putting that? Because we already had the agreement for the sewer, we already got approval. And so now they're stepping in to say, well, we want you to do these road improvements before we can carry that out, but we already had the agreement.
We do have an agreement in place, and it's certainly our position that we have complied with that agreement, and we believe the school board and the county have complied with the agreement we have in place. What the city is looking at to be addressed are broader issues beyond the scope of what this agreement calls for. Obviously, anytime we put schools in the area, it does have an impact on traffic. Of course, there will be more traffic than there is today when a school opens. And the city is basically asking us to look at some of those road issues that will arise once the school is open, to have those addressed more on the front end rather than the back end after the school opens. So that is the direction the city has approached on. Our traffic study does show that there are some improvements needed at these intersections. So it's a timing thing. Or of course, with one school, you will have some traffic needs with one elementary school that are more than what we have today. When we have a second school on the site, that will be doubled at least with the middle school. So that area has grown with the subdivisions around it. So it can be, when new schools open, we've seen that additional subdivisions come in behind the schools. So there's likely to be additional growth in the area. So these issues that we have on the roads are something from a community standpoint that should be addressed. Maybe it's not a school board issue, maybe it's a county issue, maybe it's a city issue. But collectively, as a community, some of these road issues are issues that need to be addressed by someone. You know, all too often we've had a lot of schools we put on small county roads that have not been upgraded in decades because they've been paved old country rural roads. And with the growth our county has seen over the last 20 years, our road system has not kept up. So I think what the city is kind of asking us to do, is for us as a community to look at these road issues when schools come in and try to address those as the schools go in. We've done that with some other school sites in town. When we had Siegel open, we did a joint road project, interlocal agreement with the city, and TDOT was involved with that for some of the roads that went in when Siegel was done. So those type of issues, the broader community issues, are I think what the city is really getting at with respect to the request. And from a community standpoint, we do need to make sure that the roads that we are in place adjacent to our schools are sufficient to safely transport our kids to and from school. So, and I think that's really the gist of what the city is asking in this case.
Can I follow that up?
Yes, sir.
I appreciate it. That was very delicately put. I would just like to, as far as I'm understanding, unless I'm misunderstanding something here in the board has done their due diligence. We have done our part. We have followed the traffic studies. We are taking care of what we have agreed to in this agreement. Anything beyond that would be good faith on the county, in my opinion, to work with the city.
Ms. Rosales?
Thank you. Since you brought TDOT up, has TDOT been brought to the conversation, or is this too early to bring TDOT?
This is not
into-
TDOT road.
Okay.
So
well,
TDOT would not be involved with this road.
Okay, well, that's why. That answers that question.
Ms. Sharp?
Y'all, we can go to Stewart's Creek right now and look at the roads there, and they still haven't updated those. My son went to elementary school and graduated, and they still haven't updated them. We're in the school building business. We're not in the road business. And I know money's tight for everybody, but we still got more schools to build, and we still got more property to buy. And nobody's pitching in when we're buying school and buying land. So, you know, everybody wants to be beneficial, but it's never been beneficial for us. So, you know, and they shouldn't be holding this over our head. It's wrong.
Anyone else?
I do.
Dr. Sullivan?
We also, just during this timeline, on April 3rd, got an additional annexation notification for, I don't know how many homes that was on Blackman Road. And so the timing was just very ironic. And so we get every annexation request. We appreciate knowing that. And you don't remember how many properties it was, do you? 70s? I'm totally making up a number. We got the diagram, so.
Well, there's quite a bit of subdivisions going up on Blackman Road. Like, I showed pictures of those subdivisions.
The cut through on Blair. There's
Well,
like
it's an ongoing discussion.
30
Our
houses.
discussion with the city and county will continue, and we definitely want to have participation by both those entities from a funding standpoint to provide enough funds to address the issues that are being raised. And we do not want we do not want this ending up coming out just out of the school board budget. So this is a community issue. So the county and the city, we think, should be participants in resolving this matter.
Thank you. Dr. Sullivan?
Thank you for all your hard work.
I do envision, and so part of this is I'm trying to work with our county commission. There may be more support from a county commission standpoint to work together. Again, my big statements are going to be, please remove the school system from this responsibility.
Thank you. Number 2?
So this is Beatty property additional grading requirements, and so the engineering construction department is requesting to increase the contract for phase 1 for grading portion of the project. Additional work required to obtain subgrade due to unforeseen non-structural materials and subsurface geographic features. Request is to increase the budget for phase 1 by $1 million. Phase 1 funds are already included in the overall project, and additional funds are not required, so this is just moving money around, but we like to make sure we do things the right way.
Thank you. Questions? Comments?
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
when we were doing our testing out there, they didn't pick up on some of these issues.
Not in these areas, no, sir. We do, and we've had this, unless we drilled every 10 to 15 feet over the whole site and drilled 20 feet deep, some of these things we would not have found. They're in roadways, they're a little far out. It's not bad material, it's just I can't build a road on top of it. So we excavate that material. We've got good material on site. We use that material in its place, but it's outside the contractor's responsibility. We do put some funds in this. That's why it's a movement of one fund to the other. The main reasoning this is here tonight is because typically I've got it all in one package. We don't split the site grading. We split this one this time to try and move it along. It's not like the situation that we had at Rocky Fork Elementary. That's a different situation. This money was included for this type of thing. It's just in where I had the money, and what you approved was the contract to get the site work started, and I'm moving it from one side to the other. So the money was included there, and if we had not have found some of these things, we would have had some funding left. And I'm hoping that we still do when it's all.
I just know we spend a lot of money and a lot of time
Yes, sir.
upfront trying to catch
do.
all this stuff. And I was curious.
Anyone else?
Yes, Mrs. Trace. So
Yes.
just to get understanding, so this money was already part of the budget.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and now we're just pulling it out.
I'm moving it from one side to the other.
Okay, so this is not, because the way it's worded, it makes it seem like we're asking for an increase, like an additional, so I just want to make it clear.
Well, it is an increase on one side and a reduction on the other. I'm moving
Right, yes, but it's not an increase
to the
to
budget.
the budget.
No, ma'am.
This was already in the budget. It's just the way it's worded because of how it's going to shake out. It makes it seem like we're asking for more money.
Oh.
I just want to make it clear.
Yep.
Thing.
Oh, ma'am.
The other
Dr.
part that was
Sullivan.
strange is that on this project, you have to remember, we went and started doing funding out of our own fund balance last May possibly, and so it's moving money in a different setting that we didn't have to do because we used to put it all together. We borrowed the $60 million at one time to where I think at this Beatty property, we proved money on 3 different avenues.
Anyone else? 13, financial matters.
We will do these on Thursday, so our deadline is going to be May 14th. So that's the date that we have to have all budgets passed. We're hopeful that we can have a budget passed May 9th, so that we don't have to have a special called meeting in the middle of graduation. But we left May 14th on the agenda as a possible. We have May 15th as our drop dead deadline.
Isn't there to be determined after May 14th on our,
Yeah, there's a May
Yeah.
14th if we needed
That's
it.
what I thought,
A couple things to just kind of go over briefly, and Brian will go over the rest of it. On Thursday, 143 is pretty much keeping the funding as is. Is that correct? It's actually decreasing a little bit, isn't it? So it's decreasing by 2 million, is that right, Troy?
Pretty close.
So we'll have those numbers for you on Thursday. So we don't actually input our numbers into our budget. We send them to county finance and they input them. So that's what some of the holdup is. So that's 143. 177, I have some initial bad news, and it's sitting in my drafts for you to share or for you to be aware of. So initially, it is going to be a negative. I think long-term, it's going to be a positive. But initially, the legislature has passed, so the new adequate facilities tax, it used to be schools facility tax, it was $1 per square foot. The adequate facilities tax is going to $1.50 a square foot. So we will get additional revenue. However, the other part of that law changed. It changes from you would get funding when you would pull a permit to now you are not funded until a CO is issued. And so for us, we are looking at, and talking to county finance, they asked us to, in 177, we have $2.5 million budgeted as revenue each year. They asked us to reduce it by $2 million. So our Fund 177 is going to be reduced by $2 million. We are hopeful that once that revenue starts rolling again next January and February, that it will be above that $2 million. But until we actually see those funds, we are also going to look at stopping some of our projects if needed, because this one, I need to verify when it goes into effect. If it goes into effect immediately as signed by the governor, then we need to stop our 177 projects right now because for this current school year, because that could impact us from a budget standpoint. So didn't see that coming. It was unanticipated, but I'm glad that they caught it there. Again, I think overall it will bring us additional revenue, but we've got about an 8-month window that we are going to have less money and more. And it may actually be more than that. If we get this money in February, we're pretty much done as far as being able to do things because we've missed fall break, winter break, and spring break. So it's going to hurt us, but hopefully long term will be better. Yes, sir.
The question, wasn't there an adjustment on the commercial as well?
Yes. So hopefully it'll bring $4 to $5 million additional revenue. How that is split is yet to be determined. Because if you notice, the name change was schools facility tax to adequate facilities tax. Not sure how that split will change.
Ms. Bratton?
yes, ma'am.
I wanted to say that there is a possibility that there may be a bill that is still on the table that could pass within the next 2 days, maybe next week, because I know they're wrapping up right now. And if that does make it through, but there's no guarantees on that at all, it could rectify some of the issue that we talked about, the funding, because we will getting the money for that as a compensation. So I just wanted to put out there is a possibility that there's something that could compensate for that.
Good.
But
When-
it's not guaranteed.
Anyone else? All right. You want to say anything about 141, or you want to just? wait till
141
Thursday?
is going to be a draft because we have to wait on all payroll things to be, and that all comes from the county courthouse. And so we'll have a draft of all of our expenditures, but it'll be more finalized moving into the next week, week and a half. And then I will email all of you all and publish our budgets way before May 9th. As soon as we can get those entered and then set up individual meetings if you want to have those, like we did last year. But we should only ask for maintenance of effort again this year. And I'll hit that during director's update.
Number 2,
Number 2, all of you have received emails for this for the last probably 2/3 of a year, so this is great moving forward. Board recognition of the Rockville Baseball Softball Rocket Boosters Incorporated is an RCS school support organization. Per RCS Board Policy 2.404, only a group or organization that's entered into a written cooperative agreement with the board may use the name, mascot, or logo of a school or the school district to solicit or raise money, materials, property, security, services, or other things of value. Rockville High School has provided all information requested from the board's written cooperative agreement and can be recognized as an RCS SSO. It's noted that this SSO has not applied and to receive an IRS determination letter to be recognized as a 501c3 nonprofit entity that is in compliance with the BOE written cooperative agreement. The IRS letter will allow the SSO to open and operate out of a checking account that's separate from Rockville High School. Until that determination letter is applied and received, the Booster Club will utilize Rockville High School activity funds for all its financial activities and subject to the BOE financial policies and procedures. All that to say, that's normal operations as we wait on the IRS determination letter. They run through the school until we get that. Is that a simple way to say that, Brian? They run through the school.
Questions? Number 14.
All right, number 14, transportation. 1 and 2 somewhat go together. I don't know a way for them not to go together. Trey, do you want to hit number 1 first?
Sure.
I mean, and then I'll come back and hit it over transportation here in just a second, so.
Okay. Start with number 1, the request to upgrade the bus GPS system to Samsara GPS at a cost of $117,192 for installation and hardware. Reoccurring license of $60,011. A little history, we've had GPS systems on our buses for quite some time. The current system is a G3 system. It was originally installed in 2016, 2017. Somewhere around 2 to 3 years later, Verizon, which was the carrier that was utilized for this system, no longer supported the G3. We had to go back and upgrade that to a G4 system. Since that time, which the G4, I guess we've been running somewhere between 2 and 4 years, depending upon whether it's a newer bus. As of last year, we were still installing the G4 system. Problem we are having with the G4 system is we are running into supply chain issues. We cannot get new parts and new systems. So we do have a number of buses that do not have GPS systems on them. While navigating this problem, we've also begun to have about a 20% failure rate in these GPS systems. So basically 1 in 5 is not operational. We can't get them up and running and can't get the parts to fix them. We have been looking for about 18 months at replacement system. Like we replaced our cameras a couple of years ago, we've been looking at replacing this GPS system. Part of the problem with this current system that we have right now, it's not very user-friendly. We are not capable of going to that system electronically and changing, let's say a bus transfers hands, an owner has multiple buses, they have a bus down, they want to utilize one bus to cover another bus's route, which is done. The contractors are allowed to do that. They're required by the contract to notify us so that we can make sure we have the right bus running the right route. And in those situations, I could have one bus running, if I pull the GPS up, it's running another route than what that bus is assigned to. We have the same problem with the Motorola radios that the county assigned to us. They are numbered and assigned to a bus. So if that, let's say that bus contractor decides to purchase a new bus, we are responsible for taking that radio out of the bus that they are selling and placing it into the bus that they have purchased. If it's the same route, the same number is fine. If they run that bus on another route with that radio, it shows up differently on our system. With the GPS system that we are looking at going to, we have the ability to electronically go in and change it from our system. It is also compatible with the Edgelog system that we have, which it has a second feature, which the current feature does not. It's called, we are able to allow parents, if we were to go there, they could pull up our Edulog system and actually pull up their child's route and see where the bus is on that route, if we decided to go that route. So there are multiple features to this system that we currently don't have, but the bottom line is we've got an antiquated system that is failing and not functioning correctly, and it's time to upgrade it and change it out. So this system is currently in use by TDOT. It's on a consortium price. It's on a state bid. We did compare it to 2 other manufacturers that are compatible with our Edulog system, and they were significantly more. And that's why we brought this forward as an option to change out the system.
Questions?
Yeah, I have a lot of questions. I'm so sorry.
I am too.
Is this about the GPS or about the other portion?
No, this is GPS.
Just be, okay.
This is all,
Okay.
yes, this is everything.
All right.
So, we all received some questions, and I just want to make sure that we address them, and some of it already has been addressed. But one, and this was addressed by, some of our buses direct, that are here, they're sitting in the audience, and I want to make sure that we address them. One of the concerns is the funding aspect of it. Can you elaborate a little bit about the funding? If we were adding more, are we asking for more money, or was this already budgeted, or? Yeah, that'd be great.
So this does kind of connect with the next part. Let me pull up. I asked Brian to send me this just a little while ago. So transportation budget for this year of kind of what we're looking at. So in looking at addition, and this is going to connect to the next one, we'll get to this a little bit further. We are looking at, so we have, this is account code 72710 is the account code. Our bus contracts with vehicle owners, so this is how much we pay to bus contractors. This year is $25,533. Next year, with additional routes, we are looking at $27,169. And so that is part of contract with the 3% raise that's part of the contract for contractors and drivers. Then you get down to, we are adding this into other contracted services. So that's line 399, which right now we're budgeting $350,000. Next year we're requesting to move it up to $450,000. And so these will be part of next year's budget. Overall, if we keep things as is, and this is rough, it's pretty close, but roughly we're looking at transportation being $30,100,000 roughly.
Okay, another question is the utilization of the GPS. GPS, when you're currently use it at certain speeds, when the doors open, does it, I guess the question is this GPS, are you able to use it regardless of, are there any stipulations with the GPS when it comes to speed, or if there is the door open, does it still work?
Well, the current system shows when the bus stops, it gives us the speed, and it tells us when the doors are open,
So the new one should.
if they're functioning correctly.
So it stays the same?
This one will basically do the same thing.
Okay. I think you answered the 20% of current bus GPS aren't working in current system is impossible to get from the buses, so I think you addressed that, like 20%. So the other thing is, I guess, what I'm rephrasing based on this question, new system has already been put on a few buses and being piloted. So, but you've already addressed that. I think this question is regarding to the system with the G4 that you were talking about.
No, slow down.
Okay, sorry.
We are piloting this particular system on 4 buses. I didn't want to invest in another system and not know that it worked. So it was the bus, it was their responsibility. They agreed to provide the system and put it on 4 buses so that we could utilize it for 3 to 4 months to see, was it compatible with Edulog? Does it provide the information that we're looking for? Is it somewhat user-friendly? Can we go on there and change things? And does it do what they said it was going to do?
Okay,
So it is being utilized currently on 4 buses.
Okay. And then based on the pilot program, use this system?
We're recommending that we use it, that we purchase the difference, yes.
Okay, a rollout. Okay, so this has to do with operations, and I apologize, I'm trying to understand the question so that it makes sense as I talk about it. So with this new system, and there's making changes to bus routes from office, so I guess when if someone is calling in and they have to make changes to say a bus number and they call it in, are you able to track it with a GPS?
All right, so I think where your question is coming from, currently I listen to a radio every morning.
Okay.
There's a number of times that I'm going to say somewhere between 10 and 15 would be an average. There's days that it's much higher than that, and there's days that it's less, where a parent calls in and says, my child rides bus 62, and the bus hasn't come yet. Can you tell me when the bus will come here? Well, because the GPS is non-functioning, we can't pull it up to see. So the dispatch people call the bus and say, bus, whatever, have you made it to this street or have you made it to this stop? Typically, the answer is, I've been there. I was there at 6:05. I was there at 7:02. There was no kids out. I stopped. I opened my door. I went on down the road. That would prevent that if the GPS is working correctly. If the GPS is not, or there is a swap in buses, then we cannot tell. So yes, we do have to call buses from time to time, and we're, based on what I've seen, this will pretty much solve that problem. We should be able to pull up their GPS and see real time, have they passed there, and when they stop, it does give us a time that the door is open. So that should solve that problem. We get hundreds of calls a day, and yes, we do call somewhere between 10 to 15, maybe 20, 25 some days. It just depends on the day and how many we got. When you have 20% failure in almost 400 buses, that's a lot of buses without GPS.
Mr. Rosas, can I have one point to that? So something to connect to that is when you're a parent calling to see where's my kid, especially if they're on the bus, those minutes matter, because leaving that parent on the, not knowing that a bus, and even if the bus contractor called us to tell us, being able to see this route change and this is now bus 200, not bus 300, definitely helps ease that parent's concern.
Okay, thank you. I'm so sorry. I'm almost done, I promise. And then this system, how long does it take to upgrade?
I have no clue.
No clue, okay.
I can find out and have you an answer Thursday.
Okay, I'm gonna have to get, okay. Well, one question I definitely want to ask is a concern is, who will be responsible for filling the holes from the old cameras and GPS on the bus?
Per the contract, we are.
We are, okay, you are. Okay, so is this, okay, I guess the biggest concern that is here is that because we're having to change the old GPS because of concerns and then adding to, and we're putting in new GPS systems. Is this system reliable where it's going to last has a longer lifetime than having to go back and forth and changing the GPS systems?
I cannot answer that question. Technology changes, things change. Our intention would be that this system would last 5 to 10 years. But I think that was the intention of the previous director of transportation, is that they expected that system to last longer. They got in it 3 years, and Verizon no longer supported that data. I've got a cell phone right now that my wife's about ready to choke my neck because I refuse to change it, but she can't get the app that she wants me to have because it's not supported by that age of the phone. Quit laughing, Dr. Chastain. So I wish I had a crystal ball to tell you it lasts 10 years. TDOT's been using it for a number of years now. So we have fairly good confidence it's going to last a while.
Okay, is there, and this is not part of the question, but I'm just thinking about, do we have warranty with this system? Does it
Yes,
give us
yes ma'am, we do.
Okay.
Typically, it's 12 months,
12 months.
and that's material only.
Okay. The other question, is this going to be a rollout that's going to be done by the summer?
I don't know the answer to that question. I would think it would be fairly quickly. If we can get it ordered soon, then yes, we would try and get it all taken care of over the summer.
Okay. The other one is, has to do with a contract days notice, and we're going to be given 30 days notice per contract if there's a rollout of this GPS.
That is per contract, yes.
Okay.
They can be requested to take their bus to a location where they're doing the installation, and by contract, they have to be given a 30 days notice. We will adhere to the contract.
Okay. So is this system is going to be going on the buses if it's the will of the board and it's approved, correct? For the
If you don't approve this system, we're going to continue to limp along and call them on the radio in the morning and ask them where they're at.
Okay. And then, there's questions about the installation and the cost of things and how long it takes things to be done. If there's downtime because of installation and things like that, I'm gonna have to get with them to get clarification on that question.
Okay, thank you.
My part is to read all of them. So I just wanted to take this minute to bring the questions out that they're having. But there is a question here about downtime and having to do with who's responsible for the cost when there's breakage and things like that. So,
Like I said, most of that's in the contract, and we will adhere to the contract.
okay. I tried really hard to answer all the questions. I hope I answered as much as I did.
Thank you. Mr. Tidwell?
It's behind that. You mentioned the warranty, and that was one of the questions I had. Is there a warranty on the G3 system?
Not anymore.
Not anymore, because it's just 12 months, right?
12 months.
Or 2 or 3 years into it. The G3 system, what was the reoccurring cost for that, for the software portion?
About $55,000 a year.
And this one's going to be about 63, is that right?
Yes, sir. And the original installation was 90.
Original, okay, installation was 90. Has the feedback been good so far on the G4 from the contractors?
From our, I don't know, we haven't had any complaints from the contractor. We hadn't had to call them on the radio and ask them where they were.
It's working as advertised.
Yes, sir.
I think that's it for me.
No, it's not.
Madam Chair, I have a comment.
Sir?
I know our bus drivers have spent a lot of money on buses. Since I've been on board, the buses have went from probably 90,000 up to 170,000, what I'm hearing now. So they have a huge investment, and I think we got to respect that as a board. I think we need to do our due diligence, and I'm glad you did the pilot program to make sure this equipment is hopefully going to work. But if you look at our cameras, GPS systems, radios, we plug a lot of holes in these buses.
Yes, sir.
And they're very concerned when they buy a $170,000 bus that we're in there messing with the wiring on that bus, if it's going to take that bus out of warranty. So we really need to do our due diligence on this and make sure that we're treating them fair from the investment that they're having to make.
And I do not disagree with that in one iota. In the 3.5 years that I've been asked to have oversight over the transportation department, we have implemented a new camera system. The previous one, I agree with some of the things that you're saying. I don't know that it was vetted very well. I can't speak to all of those things. I can speak to we are doing our dead level best with the camera system where now we do not have to go to their bus yard or run the bus driver down to find them, to where it is Wi-Fi based, where when they pull on our schools, now it's not instantaneous. We may from time to time ask them to sit at a school for 10 to 15 minutes to try and get a download. We are constantly looking, I would like to quit looking, but we have been constantly looking at things to better improve their safety, our students' safety, our productivity, all those kind of things. I don't think we're perfect, but I do think the current transportation director and her staff have worked very hard to try and do that. And we've had some issues with past contractors where they have, I'm going to use a term that's in my trade, they did a butcher job putting in some systems. The radios that were installed, we didn't have a whole lot of say in that. They were the county contractor. We've continued to have some issues there. We will continue to try and make things right with the contractors. They don't always agree with our decisions, whether we replace GPS or don't replace GPS. I don't want to spend this money to replace GPS. In my opinion, we should get 8 to 10 years out of them. We selected a system. 3 years later, Verizon said we're not going to support that anymore, which is a technology thing. We had to change it. I'm sorry. They've got a failure rate. I think we've done our due diligence. I think we've done what you're requesting that we do. Respect those contractors, try and find something so that we're not doing this every 2 to 3 years. Now, what makes it seem like we're changing all the time, we got new radios 3 years ago. We went to the new camera system last year, and now I'm asking to do a GPS thing. So for the last 3 years, we've been asking them, yes, to take their bus somewhere and have something else added to it. I'm very hopeful, unless I can get the county radio system fixed, that I don't have to go back in their buses for a while, and that what we've done should be what we need to safeguard them and our children, and hopefully it's that way for 5 to 7 years, and I hope that the next time we do this, to be perfectly honest, I'm not sitting in this chair.
That's just part of their frustration. I get
It is, and I get it too, because they do have to go sit somewhere, and it is frustrating, and I get it.
And we need to make that as convenient as we possibly can too, because I know we do that a lot of times during the summer months, and these guys have got lives, they got family, they got vacations planned. We need to make sure that we're working, accommodating those things too.
Miss, yes.
I'm sorry. Ms. Sharp is asked to speak.
I spoke with someone earlier today. I think we've all spoken with them, but I think probably the outstanding issue is because we have, look, these are not our buses, and we're asking them to do things to their buses that we need. And there have been some broken wires or shortages or something like that. If we go to an outside contractor, because I understand we're not doing that work ourselves.
Correct.
If we go to an outside contractor, can we hold them liable for anything that happens with the bus? Or is there a process that our drivers can say, look, there was nothing wrong with my bus yesterday, I took it over here and they installed this camera, and now when I hit the bumps, I've got a short somewhere and the lights are going off. I mean, we need to have some kind of resource for them when a third party does that, because they shouldn't have to pay for it. We shouldn't have to pay for it. The company who installs that should have to pay for it.
With the radio system, it was out of our control. That was a county system. With the cameras, we were able to maintain some of that. We made it part of the contract that one of our local bus contractors was the one who did it, which entails a better level of quality, and typically most of these contractors are dealing with those two bus sales places. I will get with the GPS system and see what our system is and see who. I don't know that answer, but we will hold them accountable to the best of our ability. We have had out of 400 buses, have we had a couple of issues? Sure.
They're probably outliers.
And it's like everything else. In their opinion, it's us and the installer. And I'm not here to say that it's not. But I'm hard pressed to pay for something until I know that we did it.
There needs to be, in my opinion, the board can disagree with me, but there needs to be some kind of process, a complaint process or some kind of process that they can go through and have their issue heard.
We do hear them. They're welcome to call me at any time if they don't think they're getting satisfaction with the transportation department.
Ms. Rosales?
Yes, I'm sorry. I think that's why they're bringing all these questions, is because of the concern and having to go back and forth with the installations, and because they own the bus, and what it can do to the interior or even electric work. There's just some domino effects that can happen. But my question is with the GPS system is that I know we're going to have a warranty for 12 months. Do they have an extended warranty?
I can ask that question. It's whatever the state's been able to negotiate, but I can ask the question. Typically, anything electronic, 12 months.
Okay, it'll be great if we can look and see if we have an extended warranty.
That'll increase the cost, so just be aware that we'll have to change that on Thursday if we get that answer.
I understand, but I'm just curious to see. I'm not saying that's what we're going to be doing. I'm just saying since there has been malfunction in the past with these GPS, and now we're looking to replace all of them, it seems like, then there could be some statements there. I don't know. I haven't seen the numbers, so I cannot comment on that.
Mr. Tidwell, just a second. Ms. Darby has to speak.
Sorry, Mr. Lee, tonight's your night.
We're not through yet.
He knew it was going to be.
Oh, we're on.
I know this isn't technically here, but since it was brought up, can you speak a little bit to the old cameras versus the new cameras? Because I have heard from some contractors that the previous cameras saw more of the seating and the students than the new cameras do.
It depends on your opinion. In some respects, in some locations, they did. In some respects, these are better. It's a balance of what I can get. Would I like to have 7 more cameras on every bus? Yes, ma'am. But I don't know that they want 7 more cameras on their buses. And at a cost of what is that cost? The camera provider was a vetted camera system that we looked at numerous systems, and we took, I'm going to call it the middle of the road, where we felt like gave us the best bang for our buck. And that's what we went with. Can we see down in every seat? In other words, can I see down in between the seats, down to the floor? No, ma'am, I cannot. Not in every seat. But in most, probably. Can I see the students on the seats? Yes. Can I see the portion of down in the seat? Sure. Can I see what that child's hands are doing? No, ma'am, I cannot. So there's kind of a give and take thing. And those were vetted through the transportation system and what's there. Is it perfect? No. Is it better than what we had? In my opinion, it is. In certain contractors' hands, they disagree. And they're entitled to their opinion.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hopefully the last question. Are you happy with the EduLog routing system since you have used that as a source to make sure it's compatible, this new GPS?
There's basically 2 major routing systems for bus transportation that are out there. They're both have their pros and cons. They've both been around a long time. We've been with EduLog 20-plus
At least
years.
since 2006, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've been with EduLog. They've been a good partner. We did threaten them 2 years ago with going to the other competition, unless we got some upgrades and some concessions. They stepped up to the plate and did so. I don't have a whole lot of experience with them. Is it compatible with our other systems? Yes. And I did not want to end up with a GPS system that did not sync with EduLaw. So we would have gone another route if this system was not compatible with them. The vast majority of this stuff is fairly compatible because there is only a couple of major brands out there that do this sort of thing. And it's kind of like the student information system that we have. The state picks 2 or 3, and then everybody else kind of has to get on board. Edulog and some of this stuff is kind of in the same boat. They've kind of weeded out a lot of the competition because the school systems have done similar things, so there's not a lot to choose from. Probably more than you wanted to know.
Well, and that's all right. I mean, the main question is circling back. If you're looking for something compatible to the system we have, then we buy the system, and then we change the routing system, then we're going.
Yes, correct.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Are you okay if we don't take a break? I know we've been in here a long time, and I know we've got a lot more. Just tell me, are you okay if we don't? We're okay? Thank you, Mr. Tidwell. Then we won't break.
If I run out for a quick second, I'll be right back.
I don't know. I tell you what. Let's take a 5-minute break, okay?
Thank you.
All right. Number 2, and before we go into number 2, Ms. Darby, you would like to make a statement.
I would. As many of you may know, I'm the owner of Space Shuttle Transportation. I do not work for the school system or the district in any way. I am hired by private individuals to provide transportation services. I will be participating in discussion and voting on this matter as it is important to my constituents. I will be discussing and voting in the best interest of my constituents and the district as a whole.
Thank you, ma'am. Dr. Sullivan.
Yeah, so, and to kind of follow up, this item wasn't brought by any individual board member. It was actually brought by our staff at the district office. So there are several changes that we need to kind of look at, and thank you to our bus contractors for being here, because I know this is vital for you guys as well to be well aware of what's going on. So I wanted to take some time and just clarify and then explain kind of where we are as we move forward. First, no one is losing any routes, and so that's a good thing to discuss. Are routes potentially going to have to be moved because of this? Yes, they would have to be moved, which is allowable as part of the contract. In looking at TCA, so the board members have these, and I'll highlight it for everybody to know. So TCA 49.6.2101. So that is the 49 is education, part 21 is transportation, so 49.6.2101. And this is important for a reason. So there's a couple things I'm going to read, just A and B. So it talks about powers of board to provide transportation. Boards of education may provide school transportation facilities for children who live more than 1.5 miles, so that's the key one, 1.5 miles, by the nearest accessible route from the school to which they are assigned by the Board of Education in which they're enrolled. The second part is what we do as a district. Boards of education may, in their discretion, provide school transportation facilities for children who live less than 1.5 miles by the nearest accessible route from the school in which they are enrolled. And this is key. But the county shall not be entitled to receive state transportation funds for any student other than children with physical disabilities who live less than 1.5 miles by the nearest accessible route from the school in which they're enrolled. So previous, and I think this is great for everyone to be aware of, under BEP, our basic education program, and the board has a copy of that. It's connected to this whole thing. It's just starts kind of on the back of the second page, and there's only one part because we're not under BEP anymore, but there's one part I wanted to highlight, and it is on the second to last page. It is pupil transportation allocated to systems that provide transportation. So we would receive an allocation. Formula established by the Commissioner of Education based on the number of pupils transported, miles transported, and density of pupils per route mile. So under BEP, there was a funding for transportation. If you'll go back and flip over to the second one now, that shows Appendix E, District Transportation Allocations for fiscal year 19. And so under this, you will see Rutherford County was $13,295,000. That number's high because you do some calculations to true, but roughly you're looking at 7 to 8 million is what the county would have been generating for transportation funds. The city is included as well. One that I always think when you're looking at these, yes, it says fiscal year 19. That is normal for the state. They're 2 years behind. So this is the last time that the state looked at this, and it was the 21 school year. But it was reporting back on fiscal year 2019. So we're receiving somewhere between 7 and 8 million of that 13 million for transportation. What is new is the TISA formula. And so TISA rolled everything into the base, which originally sounds great. We hear us talk about $6,860 per kid that we get for base funding. What is not great is that transportation is no longer spelled out. It was rolled into the base. So you are funded exactly the same if you provide transportation to every kid, or if you are like other districts. I know we have one in Tullahoma that does not provide hardly any transportation. We get the same $68.60 per student, regardless of what we do. And so that is a change that is substantial, and there are two aspects of that. One aspect of this conversation is financial, one is the logistics. And I don't want to be bringing this before the board or topic for conversation either. I would much rather this just keep rolling the way it is. That's the easy way. It keeps everybody happy, makes our contractors and bus drivers happy. It also keeps our parents happy. But we also have to look at this as a business and look at what we are truly going to have to operate in the next couple of years, because some things are going to have to come to a head. One, our transportation costs are continuing to increase. And we are now funded without transportation included. And so that financial incentive to provide transportation is no longer there. And so that's number one. The second part of that is kind of our assets. And so right now, Trey, how many open routes do we have?
5.
So we have 5 open routes. Most districts have struggled much more than we have. So kudos to our contractors, our transportation department for keeping our routes filled. You've seen across the news and across the nation transportation issues. We haven't faced that. I'm very concerned we are close to facing that. And so this mode is a way, or this proposal is a way to try to foresee that and eliminate it. We will probably be all right, honestly, this next school year. When we open our new school is when we're going to struggle. We are going to have next year routes that are definitely doubled up more than we have right now. From a logistical and operational standpoint, what that does is if you have an elementary school dismisses at 2:30, teachers are contracted for 15 minutes after students dismiss. It is a domino effect. If you double up an elementary school route, they have to come back to your elementary school, pick up a second route. Now you have extra contracted costs for your educators and your staff watching them. Then that elementary school is going to come back and pick up middle school routes. That's going to get further behind. And then by the time you get to high school, you end up with high school buses that haven't picked up yet an hour and 15, an hour and a half past when kids need to be picked up and brought home. So is it doable? Can we still provide transportation? Yes. Is it going to cause some logistical nightmares? Yes. So that's the aspect of what this kind of looks at. From a budget standpoint, and Trey, please correct me if I'm wrong, or when I'm wrong, I guess is probably the better way of putting it. What are we looking at budgeting if everything stays as is? How many new routes do we need to add next year?
I think we've asked for 12. 7 and 5. 7 regular buses, 5 sped buses.
Okay, so that would be 12, so that's going to have an increased cost. The other aspect of that is what is the extra additional funds that we have to, because we talked about this, whether it was the GPS and the Edulog, the routes, what are the extra costs?
I mean, as far as we go, that would be pretty much it. We have the route built in, then we'd have the GPS and we would have to buy the radio now because the county, once they funded the original number of radios for buses, they don't fund those anymore. So it would be the radio, the GPS, and the cameras.
So what we're looking at, and again, these are estimate numbers because we're still building our budget, but it's pretty accurate, so definitely take note of these. From a contract with vehicle owners, if we keep things as is, we're looking at $27,169,404. And again, we may have to adjust that a couple thousand, $27,169,404. If we establish the 1 mile radius, it would be roughly $26,450,000 that we would look to. And so there is savings, but again, it's not necessarily the savings. We're more worried about long-term the routes. We are going to have to hone in savings at some point. What is the, I guess, strange part of this is the way a lot of districts are operating and have been operating. Murfreesboro City put this into place last year. I don't know, I didn't hear a lot about Murfreesboro City doing it. My guess is Murfreesboro City parents that couldn't provide transportation probably became Rutherford County parents. And that could be why our enrollment increased. That's my guess. Can't prove it, but that's my guess at what happened. And so I don't like that we're in this situation, but running it from a business aspect, and I'll support whatever the board so chooses. But this is just an avenue, and I think, Trey, anything else you want to add to that? You sent the board what the estimated cost savings would be last week for multiple options.
Yeah, I think the thing that, and I don't do social media, most of y'all already know that, but I do hear, I have children and friends that are on it, and they send me things. The two things that I think have been kind of misleading is that we're trying to eliminate contractors. I'm not. I need everyone I got. I'm 5 short right now, and I'd love to have 5 more. We're going to need another 12 next year. I prefer to look at this as asset management. Every one of those contracts is an asset to Rutherford County Schools. And if we want to continue to provide a pretty good level of service, we've begun to think outside the box. And we begun 6 months ago, and I discussed some of this with you all at the board retreat. Contractors are not going anywhere. I need to keep them all. Will some routes technically be eliminated? Sure. Am I going to send somebody that's been driving in Kittrell all their life to Laverne? No. That's not our intent either. We're going to keep them as close as they can. Typically, we would shift. Routes would just kind of shift. We would push in. We currently have 50 routes and buses that are running right at capacity. To solve a overcrowded bus is two things. We look at redoing the route, which means we take some children off one bus and put them on another. That works if they're running, pretty comparable zones, but if I've got a hole in that zone, meaning I've got an open route between those 2 bus routes, and those 2 contractors are already helping us by covering that 3rd route, and they become full, my option is to run a double route. And I'm not going to say bus contractors like it or don't like it because they're getting paid by the mile. So if they drive more miles, they get paid more money over their standard route. But when I put those together and start running double routes, if there's not another bus available, which is where we're sitting in a number of locations on the north end, we're back to Dr. Sullivan's issue. Now, Ms. Barnett's going to call, and I'll just throw it out there today, she's going to call the principal at Rocky Fork Elementary tomorrow, and he's not going to be a happy camper. We don't have a bus to slide in. We're overloaded. We're just going to run a double run, and he's going to throw a fit. I can't help him. I don't justify another route. I don't have enough things that are close. That bus has got 91 children on it. 31 of them are in the neighborhood adjacent to the school. But you all want transportation. And I'm here to do the best we can. I'm looking at ways, thinking outside the box, that we can continue this service. When we make the shift next year, I call it the North End Elementary rezone shift. It's really a shift. We're going to move some Roy Waldron to Laverne Lake. We're going to move some Laverne Lake to John Coleman. We're going to move some Smyrna Elementary to John Coleman. That's going to require some additional buses. We're going to open Simon Springs next year. We're going to be taking some special education students from various places to Laverne. I'm going to need some buses to do that.
And
Go ahead.
you're probably going to need one as well. Right now, we're getting close to overloading Stewartsboro from all the Stewarts Creek.
Oh, yeah, I
business.
forgot
So
about
we're
that
probably
one.
going to have to add Stewarts Creek to Browns Chapel.
I'm going to need a third one by the end of the year. So I say all that to say this. Nobody's losing their contract. Nobody's going anywhere. It's a parent responsibility zone. We are maybe, and I can't get information from every single rural county. We are the only one left doing this. Knox County, Hamilton County, they've been doing this since '09. They do the 1 mile for K6, 7 to 12 is 1.5 miles. The other thing we're talking about, this will not affect our title schools, which are our most in-need children. We're not doing title. You don't do it, we continue doing what we're doing. We've got a budget for it. We know what it's going to cost. We're going to continue to do the best we can with what we got. My concern is we're going to be somewhere around that 8 to 10 route next year. And what's really scary if we get there is when we open Beatty and we make this big shift and I got to have 7 to 8 buses for Beatty. Now, we'll probably have some people sign up for it. Not a bad location. But it's going to be a rezone, so even then, some of these contractors that are running routes now, their route's not going to be the same in 2 years because of that rezone. There'll be a few that is. So whether you choose to look at it as a cost-saving measure, true, we do save some money, but the money that I'm saving is not in a loss of contractor. It's I'm not adding that additional bus next year. I'm reallocating these assets to better suit me, which we have that, it's in our contract. We can do that anyway. We're putting it out there, but because the reason we're sitting here with you guys is because it would be a change of, we currently provide transportation for all. And the change would be going to 1 mile. And if that's not what you want, we'll continue on, and I'll say we've given it our best shot, and we'll do the best we can next year with what we have.
Thank you. Questions?
Madam
Mr.
Chairwoman?
Tidwell? You want her to go first?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Okay. Ms. Maxwell?
We all got the same emails, and I'm very, very cognitive of the fact that nobody wants, like a kindergartner. If you take SPED out, you take Title I away, kindergartner walking down a busy highway like Rockvale or Christiana where they have wrecks all the time. Have we looked at, and I know this is probably a logistical nightmare, have we looked at where it does make sense in maybe doing, like, say, first grade and up or second grade and up? I don't know all the neighborhoods, Stewart's Creek and Blackman, but there are some areas that it does make maybe more logistical sense than it does on
It would
Rockville.
be a nightmare to try and pick
I'd rather
and
keep it
choose.
the way it is.
It's
Yeah.
an absolute. The other thing we looked at, and what Williamson County's looking at, they were looking at doing this year. They're a little different than we are. Their neighborhoods are not near as large. They're still a little rural. I'm going to spread out, maybe is a better term. What they have done, because so many of their new subdivisions have sidewalks, they've gone to hub stops. Meaning, instead of driving through the neighborhood and having 6 to 8 to 10 stops, they're doing one stop, front of the neighborhood, and you got to get your kid up to the front of the neighborhood. Whether it's a half mile or 3/4 of a mile or whatever it is, you got to get your kid to that one stop. What that does for them, it's a time thing. They're not so much in the capacity area that we are. Their concern is because they're spread out, it's time. So if I can eliminate 15 minutes in a neighborhood and I can make one stop and pick it up, I can put more students on my bus. They did their analyzation, so they're putting it off for a year, and they're going to go to hub stops this year.
So that wouldn't really help us, though.
It would, we've got, our problem is if you go into Smyrna, and that's, you look at all the older subdivisions around Smyrna Middle, that around Smyrna Middle in front of Thurman Francis or around Smyrna Primary, they've got a sidewalk around the block. The rest of those subdivisions that have been there since the 60s and 70s, there's no sidewalks there. And the roads are the same width they were when they were built. So the answer is no, it wouldn't work for us.
I can believe that because I live on Southeast Broad, and there is no sidewalks.
No,
and there are
there's
no
not.
curbs, and there are wrecks every day.
And there's not
I'm in the middle of town.
there's not a good, other than continue doing what we're doing.
Mr. Tidwell?
I had a couple questions. What schools will the routes be added? The 12 that you mentioned? Where is that? Is
It
that
varies, and it depends on our enrollment. My guess right now, we would need 3 to 5 for this rezoning thing, because what's going to happen is I got the same amount of kids, but I'm driving more miles. That child that would have been going to Laverne Lakes now going to John Coleman. Now, as the crow flies, if I could drive across the airbase, I could be right there. This is the part that is really becoming a huge impact for us, is the traffic in Smyrna, in Laverne, in Murfreesboro, where we used to be able to get from Blackman High to Smyrna West in 15 minutes, now takes 30. So that is across the district. So each year we're having to add buses because we can no longer compete with the traffic. The bus, if we weren't having the issue, could actually load and carry more children, but because of traffic, we can't. So those 12, the vast majority of them are going to be from Blackman North. We'll probably have 3 or 4 on this end, but the majority of them will be up there. The majority of the sped buses is going to be for foster children, Atlas, the BIC programs, the transportation of the students to the other end, and alternative school.
Now, you mentioned, I think that a lot of the emails that came through had to do with like there not being any sidewalks. Christiana being a great example, crossing 231 for some of those neighborhoods. People are assuming that if they don't have transportation, then their student's going to be walking. And I don't think that's really the idea here, right? I mean, it's a parent responsibility zone, so it's either carpooling, coming up with some other means. But I think because it's such a huge change, I'd much rather see it phased in. If we got it in the budget, then, I mean, we're given basically 4 months' notice right now. If we delay this until the district-wide rezone, which is going to be a whole logistical change, and we implement it at that point, then, you know, you are still getting some of the savings. You're still feeling reallocating some of the assets, as you said, and it gives parents more time to prepare in those zones.
So how do you phase in? What would be your idea?
Well, that's what I'm running through right now. One of the ideas I think you've already killed, which is like looking at neighborhoods that are worthy of walking, but you're just thinking that'd just be a nightmare.
I think it would end up, if we try to do that from a logistical standpoint with our kids and our teachers and who's doing what, I'd rather just keep it door to door than that.
Even if you tried to do it by school, then I think it would be very difficult. You couldn't separate, and I'm going to pick something, Smyrna Primary. It would have to be all of Smyrna Primary is under this program or none of Smyrna Primary. You couldn't split it. It would be very difficult from a student administrator standpoint to get this child can or can't.
Yeah.
The other thing that happens with that, we start having a lot of students with new addresses. To get around it, we have this problem now where we implement something like this in a student's address. And I guess if we're laying our cards on the table tonight, we have another thing that's kind of driving this bus. We have a large number of students that are being taken to a different address than what's on their enrollment form. Meaning that child is, its address is where supposedly it lives, and I'm not saying that they don't. But in the afternoon, they go to Grandma's, they go to Aunt Susie's, they go to whatever. And it's very difficult for us as a transportation system and the contractors to verify where these kids go. Currently, all they have to do is provide a note to the principal, and the principal says they can get on, and I'm not being derogatory toward the principal, but they allow the child to get on whatever bus, and it's on us to get them there. Well, the contractors are the ones that we're calling in daily. I got a kid with a note, it doesn't ride my bus, can somebody verify that this kid's supposed to be on my bus? Because what happens is if they get there and that child's not supposed to be on their bus, and then that child goes, well, whatever, then that driver's hung carrying them back to school. Or waiting on the police to come pick them up, or there's all kinds of, we just don't turn a child loose.
And the other side of that is you have a parent who says, I wrote a note, what do you mean you didn't drop my kid off where I told you to drop him off?
So it gets the more one-offs we try and do makes it
More convoluted.
It's more complicated, and we have more opportunities to misplace a child.
All right, so but you took Hubs basically out. You said that's really not going to help us. If we went, a lot of the concern, I think, is around elementary primarily. And if we went, I think we already had this discussion a little bit, but just for having it out in the open now, if we decided to go just middle and high this first oncoming year and do elementary later, you're saying there wouldn't be a whole lot of savings.
It'd be very little savings, and
And we're saying savings, not talking about money, we're even talking about routes.
It would be basically maybe one or two, because we have more elementary schools than we have anything. So I've still got to have all those contractors to run all those routes at the elementary. Doing the middle and the high, okay, I can't do I send one of those buses home after it runs elementary because I don't have enough middle? Do you see where I'm going with it? I'm not saying that we wouldn't. It becomes, I've still got to have everybody I've got, maybe one. I'll pick up one or two. I've been down a lot of these.
Do we have any responsibility zones right now? If you're under a half mile, or we'd pick you up if you're next door to the school?
We don't have any.
Have we looked at a half mile? Would that be on the table?
I would say it would be more help than a phase-in.
Okay.
Madam Chairwoman.
Oh, Ms. Darby?
Okay. So if I'm understanding correctly, you're saying it's kind of a we need to do it or not do it.
Yes, ma'am.
So one of my biggest concerns, and one of the biggest concerns I've heard from my constituents, Rock Springs Elementary School, which I'm super familiar with, is not in a place, quite frankly, that almost anybody can walk to at all. It's a scary enough area to drive at a lot of times. So my concern would be, I know that's not the only school on some of these two-lane roads with no sidewalks and things like that. And while I can appreciate not doing this to the Title I schools, but the Title I schools are not the only schools with two working parents who are utilizing bus services to get their kids to and from school so that they can get to and from work. I don't have an issue. I know that it would be more difficult, and I don't know if there are different systems that would help with that or what that might look like, but I think of Rock Springs Middle, for instance, has many,
Plainview, Kittrell, pick one.
like lots of sidewalks, lots of neighborhoods right there. I think there are some schools where it would work out probably fairly well and you wouldn't have so much of an issue, but I don't know if the idea to try it with one or two of those schools would be an option, just to see and even get public perception on how they're feeling about it. It's difficult. I think the timing that this has been brought up as well. I've had constituents reach out and say, I would have applied for my kid to go to one of the magnet schools because I have someone that lives close to there, but that I don't have that option because it's closed right now. Some of the after-school programs are already on wait lists or full. So I think some of it, too, is the timing in which this is being brought up, because it's not really there are people feeling like it's not giving them enough time. When it comes to, are we including, I know at the work session, the alternative schools were brought up.
Yeah, I talked to both principals of the alternative school. While that would help us from a logistics standpoint, it's not something I recommend right now. So you've got a couple options with the alternative school. One, looking at those students, are they going to come to school? And I'm just being honest, I'm not sure that there's the incentive to come to school. The second aspect is safety. I mean, you have a student that can go to alternative school for many things, but I also don't want those students being dropped off by I don't know who, or trying to say I'm parking my car here and we're not letting them drive their car. So for those reasons, the principals were adamant, no. I like it from a logistics standpoint, from an operational standpoint. I totally see where they're coming from.
I can appreciate that. I will, on the flip side, say it would be hard for me to tell a parent that their child doesn't have a ride to school when a child who has gotten in trouble has a ride to their school. That's a difficult thing to justify. On the funding side, if I'm reading this correct, the BEP formula says, based on the number of pupils transported, miles transported, and the density of pupils per route mile. So in the BEP formula, we were only getting paid for the students that were being transported.
Over a mile and a half.
Over a mile and a half.
Right. But on the TISA funding, it's included, but it's included for every student, whether they're being driven or driven on a bus, correct?
Yes, they put that in, and whether or not a district provides transportation or not, you all get the same.
Right, but meaning here, like if I drive my kids to school, the BEP formula didn't give you any money for them.
Correct.
So TISA just built it into the base for all students, period. Whatever that amount, I mean, the magical amount that they.
Magical amounts.
If you can figure out what it is.
You can figure
Right.
out what it is.
Okay, well, I'm just, trying to talk about, and I can appreciate the trying to save money, and again, looking at how we're talking about saving money, if we need to discuss ways to save money, I feel like there are a lot of things that should be discussed, brought to the table before, I guess, we start removing services from our constituents. I know we pay almost $500,000 for the voluntary pre-K program that we are not required to provide. Again, I would struggle telling someone that we're going to pull their bus service from them because we're required to teach that kid while we're spending extra money if we need to find ways to save that money. So there are just some things that I think maybe required a deeper look or more discussion maybe, but just some thoughts I had.
For me, this is not about saving money. It's an asset management. It's a way to continue to provide the same level that we're providing now. Now, we either do or we don't.
Ms. Sharp.
Thank you, Chairman Bratton. When I went to school, y'all, it's a long time ago, my mother paid for my neighbor for me to go and stay at their house. She dropped me off and I had breakfast and we all walked to school and then came back and then she came pick me up later in the afternoon. Is there not some way that we can, and look, y'all, if we all had money, we wouldn't be still sitting here, but those parents, if we did do the mile or mile and a half, could we not reimagine our school day for them and maybe have some EAs there in the morning that they could do more schooling in the morning and the parents could drop them off so they're still not walking, but they're being dropped off by their parents, but there's someone there. I know when my son was in school, we could only drop them off so early. And trust me, at 7:15 and trying to get downtown Nashville by 8 o'clock, it's almost impossible. So, I think everyone on the board has had children or have children and trying to get them back and forth. I think we need to kind of think out more outside the box on this.
Ms. Maxwell, was it you or Ms. Rosales that needed to?
I was going to ask to pull up the alternative schools and see if that would help us with our capacity, but
It would.
I thought about the
It
same
would
thing
help
too.
with the special ed buses, yes.
It would help.
But it
by
would
the same
not help
token,
with the large buses.
I'm concerned that they won't show up as well.
True. And we did, there again, it's,
And this is not I knew bringing it up when we talked about the truth, this is not a popular thing to bring up, but these are the conversations we have to have. So I know it's late, and I'm sorry that it's late, but try not to add every controversial thing to the agenda at one time. So sorry. But I appreciate the conversations. I mean, there's no hurt feelings regardless of which way we go, because it is what it is. We're in the conversations we have to have.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Young?
I was looking over this Tennessee code annotated, 49.6.2101, power of boards to provide transportation. If we flip over to G and we read that, there's a section here talking about special hazards shall include any absence of sidewalks, a highway with 4 or more lanes, the intersection where right turns are on red is prohibited, one or more sexual offenders as defined, violent sexual offenders as defined. It's saying that reside in the area or any other condition that could affect the safety or well-being of children walking to school if the LEA determines a special hazard zone is present. It shall submit its findings to the entity responsible for the road or highway. The entity is responsible for the road or highway is encouraged to cooperate with LEA to devise methods to minimize the hazardous conditions. So if we go to our county and tell them we need sidewalks,
You're my hero.
We're
We
sending,
got an insurance salesman here tonight. We need a policy for Mr. Young.
Boy, I recommend you take on that task.
well, I mean, it's cheaper
Good point.
to pay bus transportation than
Yes.
to build sidewalks. I can tell you that right now.
Just don't make me do it to the city, please. Somebody else pick that one up.
I'm just saying.
Anyone
there's
else?
a clause in there. that
Yeah, it's a good point.
I'm looking at.
Ms. Darby.
I think Mr. Young brings up a good point, and I almost wonder if we did get with the county and maybe look at, hey, we're not going to ask you for sidewalks, but can the county contribute, I don't want to call it a scholarship, but maybe some money to help purchase more buses or different things of that nature that might be beneficial? I don't know. I'm just throwing some things out there, but.
Good luck. Great idea, but good luck.
I like the
Look, we got to
sidewalk
throw
idea.
stuff at the wall and see what sticks.
Good luck. Great idea. but
Anyone else?
good luck with that one. I think, Ms. I'm gonna say it's a very hard decision, and I know the county is growing a lot, and there's students coming. I know the TISA formula changed the funding, and it brought more funding, but the components were a little bit more convenient because it gave funding specifically to certain areas, like, for example, the capital projects, which is something that I have tacked on and tried to get funding for and going to the legislature to get money for that and changing the TISA formula. It's a hard decision, and there's arguments for why there is looking into it, and then there's also the argument of the parents as well. And so I'm just saying it's just a hard decision to make.
I think the unfortunate part is TISA almost incentivizes you not to provide transportation. Just based on, I try to be very aware, based on reading the room, I request we just go ahead, instead of voting on this, move this to further study to be able to discuss as we do with rezoning. Unless, I know there's no motion or anything, but unless somebody's just totally against that,
Wait. He wants to postpone or table it? I think he wants to postpone.
Mr. Tidwell had a good point. Why, I mean, I'd much rather look at it from,
You'd like to do some more study.
especially when we have a new school.
True, we do
Add
have
something
new
to that.
schools.
I think we should do a safety feasibility study with that. I'm not sure how much that costs, I don't know.
Well, we,
A safety feasibility study
Yeah, I think,
for the areas.
I don't think there is any feasibility as far as kids walking. I mean, where we are, I think it comes down to our parents versus school systems. I think you're right. We are not built for a walkable area. We're just not
we're
a
not.
walkable county.
Because
Some of the new subdivisions are, but 80% or
Right.
of the older portions of all of the cities and areas, rural, they're not set up for that.
So we are going to postpone this for further study, and we'll come back and revisit.
could I make a recommendation that we create a committee to look into this?
You can.
That I would like to recommend to form a committee to look into this proposal of what the impact will be.
We will come back and revisit the entire thing as well as a committee, okay?
Great, thank you. you.
I'd rather
So
internally us
if we're
have
going to
discussions
postpone it,
first.
it'd be after budget, so it'd be something we would
Next
look
year.
at in the summer.
Yep.
Okay.
So that tells us how to budget.
So,
All at one time.
and then we'll discuss if we're going to need a committee then?
Yes, ma'am, we will.
Oh, okay, great, thank you.
Can I?
Ms. Bratton,
Tidwell,
do we need to vote and postpone this?
we can't
I can pull
vote.
it
I know, I'm saying on Thursday, that's
We
what I'm
probably
saying.
on Thursday will
Yeah.
vote to postpone.
Great,
The recommendation's been made, but we haven't voted yet.
fantastic.
All right? Is the horse dead? Can we stop beating it? Okay. Number
No,
15.
not technically.
No. 15, insurance.
No updates.
Thank you.
We do not have a rate increase.
You can always, of course, do a motion, but the director of schools and the chair also can help set the agenda. So unless somebody completely objects, I can move to it. But if we want to make a motion to cover it and send it, we're open to do that too. Just to cover it, it's fine with me. Okay. Anybody else want to talk about it?
I think, no, but I think that's a good idea. Insurance, she said no. Financial report, we have covered.
Only thing I would add is we did thankfully get our summer school amendment notification yesterday, not amendment, sorry, summer school funding, and it will be an amendment in probably June. Is that we want to do it all together, clean up and summer school, or do you want to do it in May? So we've got notification yesterday, summer school funding's 4.7 million, and then transportation's 461,000. I always like to give a shout out to, while we're talking, I'm going to go ahead and hit the horse one more time.
Go ahead.
So I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for the Swaders, and so I know the Swaders in Walter Hill, so looking at our bus contractors, Henry and Deborah, who's no longer with us, I mean, amazing influences in my life, so I definitely appreciate our bus contractors too.
That's so
Correct.
sweet.
But you'll see an amendment for 4.7 million for summer school coming up some point. So,
Okay.
So, Dr. Sullivan, the amendment for summer school,
Yep,
the 7 million, is it just?
4.7.
Huh?
4.7.
4.7, oh, sorry, 4%. What's the grade bands again?
K9, rising K9.
K through 9, okay. I had asked, I got a question about high school, offering some stuff.
High school is not supported by the Department of Education, so we're not offering it, and I don't like it, but they have enough opportunities during the day for credit recovery, and then we're offering credit recovery at each school to be able to do things for their school, but not that traditional summer school.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Director's update on Thursday. You'll be on Thursday, right?
I can do 1 minute.
Thursday.
Oh, I was just going to say it's
Are
wrapping
you going to do 1 minute?
I was just going to say it's wrapping up.
Watching you.
It's wrapping up.
It's wrapping up. That was
General
it.
Assembly will
That's
be
it.
Closing Thursday or next week.
All right. General discussion? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good news, good news. Fun times, fun times, fun times. Jazz Fest, the 26th and the 27th, we have just confirmed Dave Sanborn, a tribute band for Friday night. And then for Saturday, Michael Fair, he's a pretty well-known jazz musician who hangs out in Williamson County. And there may or may not be a band from Belmont Saturday afternoon. We're still, they've called and asked, and we're trying to fit them into the agenda. So y'all please come and support it. Come help us direct traffic and come enjoy some jazz music. Also, May the 6th, do we want to talk about that now?
We can talk about it.
Okay, May 6th, our sweetest are going to get some more sweets. We're going to do the cakes again this year. So y'all get ready for us to deliver the Kroger cakes on Monday.
We'll deliver the cakes, and we will have the signs and everything, just like we did last year, so. I know that's Special Olympics, but we think we'll be finished delivering by the time Special Olympics starts, so we'll have plenty to do. Anyone else?
Yes, I do have something real quickly. I know there's been a lot of conversation about challenge books, and Mr. Tidwell, you have been opening the door, and some of us have done that as well, but I want to foolishly just go ahead and challenge 4 books, and I know that I can only do 4 books at a time. I mean, a book at a time. Huh? Yes, but I'm going to go ahead and turn these in. But, like I said, you can only challenge 1 book at a time, so the first one is on top, and you can just work through there. So it'll go through the right process.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, it's gonna have to, we're gonna have to work on some logistics, because I have someone else that submitted 3, so they'll,
That's fine.
this is gonna
Those are
definitely
the
fall
ones
into.
I've submitted.
Okay.
So I know that there's been others that I've submitted as well, but I'm going to be publicly submitting these in person.
Anyone else?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
We're adjourned.